A tall blonde man with a big smile exclaimed, "I can't believe it's already time for our little genius to go to Duel Academy," while the attractive and voluptuous blonde woman next to him rolled her eyes. With her hands on her hips and a sly smile on her face, the blonde woman said, "Geez Joey, you would think you were the one going to Duel Academy, not Naruto-kun. Geez, no need to be so mean. My nephew is finally going to show the world what the second coming of the King of Games means," Joey exclaimed, triumphantly raising his hands. And 2. A gorgeous woman with brown hair scowled at her friend while a man with unusual tricolored hair, black, red, and yellow, chuckled uneasily. T yelled, "Joey, do not put pressure on my son." Joey whimpered and retreated in terror. Joey tried to appease his longtime friend by saying, "Humi, I would never presume to tell what Naruto should do. As usual, I'm acting like a protective mother bear." Joey turned his head away from his smirking wife My Valentine and thought, "I can't believe Yuge actually puts up with this all the time." T's tone and manner instantly changed when she turned to her beloved boy. "Naruto, are you sure you are all ready? Maybe we should wait a year," T asked sweetly. A tall boy with blonde hair yawned and opened his eyes, revealing his characteristic blue eyes, while grinning at his mother. He did not inherit his father's characteristic trio of hair, but he did inherit his mother's blue eyes and the yellow he called blonde. Naruto pointed at his mother's tender gaze and said, "I wait another year and you will even be less eager to let me go to the island, Mom." T was about to begin when her husband touched her shoulder, but T nodded reluctantly as Yugi softly said, "T, he's right. We could wait another 40 years and you still would not be happy to let him go. It is his time to go his own path." When her son nodded and grinned, T said, "Be careful, okay, and call us every day." Before putting his arms around both of his parents, who gave him a hug in return, Naruto said, "I swear I will call whenever I can." As Yugi proudly put his hand on Naruto's shoulder, he said simply and sincerely, "I love you." With a smile on his face, Yugi said, "Choose what you feel is right, Naruto, and know we will always support you." They hugged for another minute before Naruto released his hold, promising, "I will make you proud." Then he gave Joey a high five, and she smiled and ruffled his hair. Naruto's eye twitched at being treated like a child, and he scowled. As Mai slapped him across the head and Naruto perspired, Joey told him, "Take care of yourself and try to get a girlfriend before the end of the year." With a feeble smile, Naruto said, "Whatever you said, Joey Oji-san." An agitated T swiftly drew Joey away and made the decision to express her feelings for her old friend at that very moment. Naruto chuckled before being embraced by the stunning Mai Valentine, who put her arms around him and placed him against her large chest. As Naruto noticed T grabbing Joey by the ear, Mai starts, "Despite what my silly husband says, we want you to enjoy life at the academy and make friends. Do not feel pressured to have a girlfriend just because that is what you were told, okay?" Mai said, grinning sweetly as she squeezed Naruto's face until it turned red. T still got a winking face, Mai thought contentedly. She was devoted to her husband and genuinely loved him, but she couldn't resist making fun of Naruto whenever she could because she found him so adorable. She was curious to see what kind of girlfriend he would eventually bring home, and she thought he had such expressions. As she slowly relaxed, Naruto rubbed her back awkwardly and said, "Hee, sure, whatever you say, Mai-ne-chan." He recalled calling Mai that when he was a teenager, even though she was old enough to be his aunt. He vowed that the only thing preventing the charming, if not flirtatious, blonde from killing him was T's own fury. As his mother and his honorary aunt continued to look young and attractive and continued to draw a large following of both sexes, Naruto reflected, "I guess she really doesn't look like an auntie, or Mom doesn't look old enough to be a mom." Everyone turned to watch Yugi cough after Naruto was freed from Mai's tight hold. As everyone nodded, Yugi clarified, "Okay, now Kaiba has sent a private jet for us to Duel Academy so we can be there for Naruto's initiation, so we best be off." When they went outside, they had to brace themselves because two men were standing watch and a fancy, expensive private jet was operating on the launchpad. One man waved the group over while nodding to his partner. "Yugi-san, Naruto-san, and fellow guests, please come into the jet. Mr. Kaiba has been waiting," the man screamed. AN3. While Joey was muttering to himself, the group joyfully boarded the jet and fastened their seatbelts. "Sure, when I ask Kaiba for some front row seats to a baseball game which I knows he could easily afford, he pretends he doesn't know me. But when Naruto needs a ride to Duel Academy, it is all hands on deck to get him a jet," Joey grumbled angrily. AN4. Naruto and Yugi rubbed their heads anxiously. Even though they were no longer rivals, Joey and Kaiba were far from friends, especially since Kaiba would not grant any of Joey's requests, no matter how modest. As the screen blinked and Seto Kaiba's smug suit-clad face appeared on screen, a voice said sarcastically, "Well, Wheeler, I don't remember inviting you on this jet, so feel free to leave and get on a boat." "What did you say, rich boy? Come here and say that to my face," Joey yelled, furious, while Mai restrained him in his chair. Joey became even more irate, so Kaiba said, "Sorry, does the monkey have hearing problems now?" Joey pouted as Yugi gently said, "Kaiba, please, if you continue to banter with Joey, Naruto will miss his initiation." Kaiba scowled and then let out a sigh. As the aircraft began to take off, Kaiba gave the order, "I suppose it would take too much time to get Wheeler out of the jet, so just start flying, pilot." As Mai soothed Joey and T conversed with Yugi, Naruto gazed up at Kaiba with a composed expression. Since Kaiba was still among the wealthiest men on the planet, Naruto respectfully called him Godfather. Kaiba turned around so Naruto could not see his slight smile, but he said bluntly, "Naruto, I placed a lot of faith in Yugi's son, so you better not let me down." The fact that Joey's best friend Yugi selected Kaiba to be the godfather of his only child was another thing that Joey disliked about Kaiba. Joey felt somewhat ignored by the fact that Kaiba was there for his son, even though Yugi patiently explained that it was more for pragmatic reasons. What was even more startling was that, despite Kaiba's insistence that it was to rub it in that loser's face, much to Joey's annoyance, Yugi could still sense the respect he had earned for defeating Atem. Kaiba nodded in agreement before ringing could be heard in the background. Naruto reassured him, "Of course not, Godfather. I plan to be the very best, and not just because of my last name or who I know." Though Naruto nodded his head, Kaiba said, "Sorry, it looks like I will have to cut our chat short. I will be watching your entrance exam duel live, so please make a show for me." Naruto disembarked first from the jet when it landed on a designated landing pad on the Duel Academy island a few hours later. Naruto waved off his parents and their friends offered to accompany him after his written exam, but he grinned when he arrived. One of the men outside the building said, "Name please." Before he looked up, the man's eyes widened, and Naruto said simply, "Naruto Muto." Naruto sighed as the man stammered, "The Naruto Muto? Son of Yugi Muto, the king of games?" Naruto pulled out a personal ID and said, "Here is some ID." The man examined it and nervously gestured to one of the doors. Naruto shuddered as the man bowed courteously and said, "Right through there, Mr. Muto." As Naruto walked into the classroom, he thought, "Geez, Mr. Muto makes me seem so old." He was sweating. He was relieved to see that the prospective students were too preoccupied with their own papers to notice him. He quickly skimmed the pages of the written exam that was in front of him when he sat down. It appears to be a multiple-choice question with mostly fill-in-the-blank questions. As Naruto reviewed question 1, he thought, "I guess it makes sense since the practical exam will require us to use the field experience while this test is general knowledge." Read the first query. 1. Vorse Raider is a monster? Well, I suppose they get off to a simple start. Naruto wrote, "Normal," in the blank space, thinking, normal. Since he was familiar with basic knowledge and problem-solving techniques, he completed the remaining questions rather easily. Alright, the second to last query. With more than 4 options, it appears to be a multiple-choice test. Your opponent has 2,500 life points remaining, while you have 100. They have no cards in their hands and have summoned Skull in attack mode, 2,500 1,200s, AN5, and Mirror Force face down. You have Cyber Dragon, 2,100 1,600s, in defense mode, Cyber Dragon, Power Bond, Spell Card, Emergency Provisions, Spell Card, Ring of Defense, Spell Card, and Ring of Devastation, Trap Card, on the field. What are you doing? To regain life points and buy time, play Power Bond face down and activate Emergency Provisions on every card. To summon Cyber End Dragon, 4,000 2,800s, with double attack points and attack, use Power Bond on your 3 Cyber Dragons. It's your turn. Bluff opponents into not attacking by switching Cyber Dragon to attack mode. In attack mode, you can call forth a new Cyber Dragon from your hand by sacrificing one. Utilize Cyber Dragon's Ring of Destruction. Apply the Ring of Destruction to the summoned Skull. Chain Ring of Defense and use Ring of Destruction on Cyber Dragon. Chain the Ring of Defense and use the Ring of Destruction on the summoned Skull. Give up the duel and act honorably. When Naruto saw some of the options, he began to perspire. What kind of answers are those? Pass turn. Surrender duel. The only way you pass a turn is if you are powerless to do anything. No one who gives up a duel is not a coward, Naruto thought angrily. Naruto hummed as he acknowledged that the person who came up with these questions might have considered options other than the blatantly stupid ones. As some people did not even use traps in their decks because they believed them to be too slow to be effective, Naruto pondered, they really test you if you know some of these card effects. Option B would actually sound good for someone who has never heard of Mirror Force because the double attack point would give them enough attack points to defeat Summon's skill and win in one attack. As he circled the I option with the pen, Naruto thought, the right answer is I because Summon's skull has the attack points to knock your opponent and you out, but Chaining Ring of Defense will prevent the damage you take while still doing the damage to the opponents so you can win the duel. With a smile, Naruto thought, last question. Ha finally won about the gods the dorm rooms would be modeled after. After much urging, Seto finally agreed to give an overview of the 3 Duel Academy dorms, and it would be an understatement to say that Naruto was not happy. Even though it was a test, Naruto could hear prospective students complaining about being assigned to Slifer Red and the horrors of the dorm room. When I show him pictures of what Slifer Red looks like, I am sure he will change his tone, he thought. Which one of the 3 Egyptian god cards does not have the same effect? Except for divine-type monsters, this card cannot be targeted, destroyed, or removed from play by monster, spell, or trap effects. For a standard summon, this card requires 3 monsters to tribute or sacrifice. There is no denying this summoning. In addition to destroying every monster under your opponent's control and dealing 4,000 points of damage, offering 2 monsters as tribute increases this monster's attack points to infinite for 1 turn. This card is sent to the graveyard at the end of the turn if it is special summoned from the graveyard. After examining it, Naruto grinned. The Egyptian god monsters were the kind of monsters of which his father and godfather were most proud. Naruto was aware that the rankings and conditions of the dorms were determined by the cards that his godfather Kaiba preferred. The 1 god card Seto possessed during Battle City served as the inspiration for the Obelisk Blue dorm, which received extravagant special treatment. Because Seto was obsessed with having the strongest god card even though he didn't have one, Yellow was still able to afford upscale accommodations. Slifer Red received the least amount of funding because Seto didn't like losing to Yugi during Battle City when their god cards were at stake. Naruto vividly recalled his godfather's response when he confronted him about this. Seto asserted, Naruto, you are too young to comprehend this, but managing a private island for duelists is very expensive and the budgets need to go where I find it most appropriate. Seto's self-satisfied smirk and closed eyes undermined this, making Naruto sweat at his godfather. Naruto circles the response in his pen and says, it is C because that effect is specific to Obelisk while the other effects are the same for all 3 god cards. AN7. After carefully reviewing the test multiple times, Naruto placed it in front of his desk. He glanced around and noticed that, in contrast to him, the other prospective students were still making notes on their pagers. When he finished his papers, a nearby proctor noticed and walked beside him, leaning in. Are you done? Naruto nodded as the man asked in a low voice. Are you certain? The child in front of him didn't appear to be a conceited brat who thought he owned the world for finishing the test quickly, so the man asked with some concern, the test is for a full hour and it has only been 10 minutes, sir. When his hand happened to cover his name, Naruto nodded once more. Will you kindly excuse me as long as I show up for the practical tests? Naruto politely inquired, not wanting to spend 45 minutes waiting here when he could be out and about. After giving it some thought, the man nodded. Naruto smiled appreciatively at the proctor's reminder, please be quiet and mindful of your time. The proctor smiled amusedly at Naruto, who snatched up his bag and slipped out. When the proctor saw Naruto's name written on his paper, his eyes widened. Naruto Muto? He is coming to Academy this year? I mean, I heard rumors about his age. I never thought I would be lucky enough to be heard when the son of the King of Games came to our academy. The man exclaimed, maintaining a composed expression despite being nearly ecstatic. While Naruto grinned down at his deck, a certain voluptuous blonde magician laughed from inside her card. Are you prepared, girl with dark magic? There were more giggles, so Naruto asked his deck when they were outside once more. Fortunately, most people were too preoccupied with the exams to notice Naruto's distinctive blue eyes and blonde hair when he chose to explore the island. Naruto thought with dread, if I actually got Dad's odd hair color, I would never be able to go anywhere. His dad's hair was distinctive, and since he was the only one with it, People assumed that anyone who happened to have it had to be related to Yugi Muto himself. Naruto's blonde hair and blue eyes were different from many people's, but not so obvious that people immediately connected them. He learned that Duel Academy was set up so that students stayed there for 4 years and then had the option of choosing what path they wanted to take in life, with some notable graduates becoming professional duelists, by simply talking to people, omitting his last name when asked. When Naruto was by himself, he laughed to himself. He would have loved to grow up here, Naruto thought, as a vision of a middle-aged man with white hair and a broad smile made the peace sign appear in his mind. To think this place has evolved where a simple card game matters more than armies of people duking it out with each other. AN2. Naruto caught a glimpse of a girl wearing a blue-trimmed Duel Academy outfit and a blue miniskirt as she passed by talking to her 3 friends who were dressed similarly. His gaze briefly shifted to the length of the skirts and the number of legs exposed before their blue boots covered their feet as they passed him. Naruto shook his head in amusement after thinking dryly, yeah, he would love it here for more than peace. Naruto thought, sure, Big Sis Mai wears a lot skimpier outfits in public but she does so to impress and show what she has. These girls are wearing this as part of the mandated outfit and nobody bats an eye. Mai winked and leaned forward as she grinned at him. Naruto was deep in contemplation when he heard a grunt and unintentionally ran into someone. Naruto apologized, sorry I was lost in thought, then he heard a familiar laugh. That makes 2 of us, I suppose. As Naruto blinked, he saw his father wearing rather casual dark clothes with his deck on his hip. Son, Yugi said warmly. Dad, why are you here? Startled to see his father strolling around like him, Naruto asked. Yugi smiled as he gazed thoughtfully up into the sky. As Naruto laughed nervously, Yugi confessed, your mother was so worried about you no matter how many times I told her this island is safe I needed some time to collect my thoughts. Yugi and his friends were aware that T was so fiercely protective of Naruto that even Yugi found it a little excessive. Yugi and Naruto laughed together until Naruto's deck emitted a sigh. When one card began to glow, Naruto took his deck out of his pocket. He swiftly and carefully removed the Dark Magician Girl card, and she materialized in all of her exquisite splendor with a flash of light. Her blonde hair framed her lovely face and green eyes, and she was dressed in her signature magician's attire, which was light blue and pink with some gold accents, exposing a fair amount of skin, including her shoulders, top of her large breasts, thighs, and most of her legs. She was a little shorter than Naruto and Yugi. She always seemed to find a way to make fun of Naruto because he thought she was a knockout. After stretching for a while, she sighed joyfully and gave Naruto a tight hug, pressing his chest against hers. Naruto blushed a little before the hug continued, and Yugi simply grinned. A few minutes later, Dark Magician Girl, or Mana as she preferred to be called, withdrew from Naruto and bowed to Yugi. Yugi, I hope all is well with you. Mana intelligently questioned her previous owner. I am doing very well, Yugi said, nodding. Do you enjoy Naruto's company? Does he frequently use you? Knowing that his former card particularly enjoyed engaging in duels with Naruto, he asked politely. Naruto rubbed his head and Mana winked. Yugi had discovered that this was Atem's childhood friend, the real Dark Magician Girl dual spirit of Mana. Rewind to the moments immediately following Naruto's birth. Yugi's deck gave off a powerful power similar to when he used Timaeus, so he excused himself, went to an empty room, and pulled out his deck while his friends and family were observing and swooning over his newborn son. He pulled out a card that was flashing and was momentarily blinded by a bright light. He saw someone he had never considered outside of a duel when he was able to focus again. Girl, Dark Magician. The dual spirit gave Yugi a gentle smile, a wink, and a peace sign as he asked in shock. Yugi, how are things going? As Yugi opened his mouth several times in an attempt to comprehend this, the Dark Magician Girl asked in jest. How are you doing? You returned to the domain of the beasts and dual spirit world with the legendary knights, didn't you? As he and Atem vividly recalled seeing the dual spirits after they assisted in defeating Dertz and the Great Leviathan, Yugi asked incredulously. Dark Magician Girl gave him a cute wave while giggling. As Yugi continued to look perplexed, the Dark Magician Girl remarked, silly, that wasn't me that left. Let me explain. The Dark Magician Girl who assisted you in defeating Dertz was a 10,000-year-old dual spirit who did depart to return to her home world. Yugi looked at Dark Magician Girl in comprehension as she explained, I was the Ka, or as you know, dual spirit of Mana. AN3. All right, that makes sense, but shouldn't you have moved on with Mana and Atem if you were her dual spirit? As Dark Magician Girl flushed, Yugi inquired. Indeed, Atem and Mana are somewhat. Awkwardly, Dark Magician Girl turned her gaze away from Yugi and said, happy to see each other after 5,000 years apart and you know. You mean they're together, don't you? Yugi inquired, not overly shocked because he could see that Mana and Atem shared a very special bond even in the memory world. Dark Magician Girl said, quietly avoiding answering Yugi's query, Master Mahad has gone on ahead of me with them. With a contemplative expression, Dark Magician Girl placed her hand on Yugi's chin and turned to face her. Before glancing past Yugi into the room where Naruto was sleeping, Dark Magician Girl said, besides I felt my role here on Earth was not yet done but I could not figure it out so I kept my spirit in your card till now. Hold on. You mean you have a role for my son? Dark Magician Girl grinned at Yugi's paternal guardianship as he asked in a protective manner. Dark Magician Girl gasped over her heart and said, I am sure your son will love dueling like his father so when it is time give him my card and we shall see what the future hold together. After giving it some thought, Yugi nodded, returning to the present. As promised, Yugi gave Naruto his copy of the Dark Magician Girl, who bonded with Naruto right away and vice versa. Dark Magician Girl quickly became irritated with Naruto using her formal title, so they decided that she would be referred to as Mana when they spoke in order to honor her deceased master. Mana tilted her head briefly at Yugi's deck before turning to face him thoughtfully. When Naruto arched an eyebrow, Mana remarked, I don't sense Winged Kuriboh in your deck anymore. You just got him, didn't you? Yugi laughed as Naruto inquired. The spirit of Kuriboh was furious when Winged Kuriboh was added to Yugi's deck, and as Naruto affectionately described it, a furball fight broke out as each Kuriboh in Yugi's deck cutely attempted to outdo the other. Yugi remembered a brown-haired boy about Naruto's age walking by, and he smiled fondly. I had a hunch that Winged Kuriboh should have been with another young man I saw. As Naruto whistled, Yugi confessed, I thought you would treat him right because of his honest nature and personality. Naruto joked, must be one hell of a person for the all-powerful King of Games to favor him with a card from his own deck. Yugi gave him a phony frown and scowl. Before Mana's cough caught their attention, the father and son were laughing together. Naruto, shouldn't you be heading to the practical exam right now? Mana inquired as Naruto's eyes grew wide before he looked at his phone. Go. I'm running late. As he hurried back to the building where he was meant to go, Naruto yelled. Maybe T did have a right to worry about our son, Yugi muttered as she walked back in silence. When Naruto swiftly returned to the room, he discovered a duel in progress. An older man with blonde hair, a feminine appearance, and an arrogant demeanor was paired with a teenager with brown hair who was still grinning, as though dueling would be sufficient for him to survive. So, Mr. Yuki, were you planning to give up? With his duel disc attached to his stomach rather than his left hand as most duelists do, Dr. Crowler asked mockingly, already labeling Jaden Yuki a slacker. Crowler had Ancient Gear Golem, 3,000 on the field, 2 cards in his hand, and 3,000 life points. Jaden Yuki held 3 cards in his hand and Elemental Hero Burstinatrix, 1,200 on his field. Naruto quickly realized that this was most likely a lecture hall because of the room's enormous size and the numerous rows of connecting desks that were probably used for study sessions. Since Naruto was familiar with many archetypes and their general themes, he glanced over Crowler's side and thought, well, so Dr. Crowler is using Ancient Gear monsters pure power and attack force as they can penetrate through defensive monsters to inflict damage and have the ability to shut off spell and trap cards when they attack. In order to avoid being seen, Naruto was hiding in the tunnel leading to the duel arena, but he was still able to hear everyone and see the duelists. He cast a sidelong glance at Jaden, the female elemental hero. Before recalling what Seto and Yugi had to say about that archetype, Naruto pondered, Jaden must be using that fusion-heavy elemental hero archetype I heard about. Low attack monsters but big rewards when they fuse together. Yugi felt more optimistic, pointing out that the cards complemented themselves and had a lot of support cards, while Seto rejected the archetype as being overly dependent on fusions and said the cards were rather weak on their own. AN4. Even though Mana had gone back to her card while Naruto was running, she was still able to communicate with him telepathically while she was in her card form. Mana thought to him, Naruto. Well? Naruto reflected. As Naruto gave him a respectful nod, Mana said, I sense Winged Kuriboh in Jaden's deck or more specifically his graveyard. Naruto thought, so, this is the person Dad bumped into. He must be something special if a card spirit wanted to go with specifically. He missed the irony that Mana had chosen him to be with. No, instruct. I'm just getting into the swing of things. Jaden looked at his hand and exclaimed with confidence. Jaden reflected, I have exactly the right cards to turn this around. The warrior's normal spell of returning alive polymerization, standard spelling. And the recently sketched skyscraper, field spell. Jaden whispered, this is for you, winged Karibo. Only Naruto, who was grinning softly, heard him. All right, let's get started. With the warrior returning alive, I will bring Avian back into my grasp. As he used the spell card, Jaden declared. The warrior's normal spell of returning alive in your graveyard, pick out one, warrior type, monster and place it in your hand. Quickly choosing Avian, Jaden added him to his hand before calling him into attack mode. Against the much larger ancient gear golem, elemental hero Avian, 1000, stood proudly with his fire companion. Crowler sneered, very impressive but another amateur mistake. They are weak on their own, but they are powerful when they work together. Before revealing polymerization in his hand, Jaden proclaimed. Today, Burstinatrix and Fusion Avian will combine to create Fusion Summon, as his two heroes hovered in midair before disintegrating into fragments that recombined to form a single monster. Jaden uttered these words. Hello, Flame Wingman, the elemental hero. As his new normal yelled at Crowler, Jaden yelled, 2100 1200ths. A typical spell card is polymerization. Send the field and or hand monsters specified in a fusion monster requirement to the graveyard. Fusion summon one fusion monster. It's more like that, Jaden, go. Cyrus applauded as Naruto glanced up to see a short, blue-haired boy wearing spectacles supporting Jaden in the stands. When Naruto spotted a young man wearing a silver jumpsuit and a professional appearance, Bastion remarked, yes, good show, but unfortunately even fused together the wingman is still 1000 points short to topple the ancient gear golem. Bastion remarked gloomily as Cyrus's eyes grew wide, shame too because the wingman has the ability to deal damage to the opponent equal to the destroyed monster attack points whenever it wins in battle. Points for the rest of their lives? That would have made things better for Jaden, Cyrus said. Even though Crowler was somewhat impressed that Jaden could actually summon a high-level monster in the first place, he still had a patronizing expression when he returned to the field. Are you finished yet? I am still quite busy, the irritated Crowler inquired. Of course not. Jaden continued to smirk confidently. I have this card because I knew Wingman was still too weak. As the field spell card slot on his duel desk flipped, revealing a slot, Jaden exclaimed. A skyscraper. A dozen skyscrapers suddenly appeared around Crowler and Jaden, with the wingman stranded on top of the tallest one in contemplation. It even changed the scenery tonight with a moon in the distance, Jaden declared as the virtual solid effects activated, altering the field as the spell activated. Now, wingman, demonstrate your abilities with that tin bucket. As the wingman grunted and leapt from the skyscraper, heading for the ancient gear golem, Jaden declared. With a sly smile, Crowler held up his arms as though he welcomed the assault. Go ahead. As it was revealed that Golem still had 3000 attack points, Crowler mocked, that stupid skyscraper hasn't reduced the attack strength of my Golem by a single point. Before it stopped just before Gear Golem landed at its feet and leapt off to fly above it once more, Wingman started to accelerate, even going so fast that it had 2 after images. You're correct that my skyscraper increases my Wingman's power by 1000, but it doesn't reduce your Golem's power. As Wingman's attack points reached 3100, Jaden disclosed. As Wingman started to descend, it transformed into a fire and flew toward the ancient gear golem. Exit now! Crowler yelled in disbelief. While several notable students, including Chazz, Bastion, Cyrus, Alexis, and Zane, watched in disbelief as Wingman successfully nosedived the golem and caused a massive explosion upon impact, Naruto simply grinned. When the smoke cleared, it was evident that Wingman had joined Jaden again. Before a portion of the golem's hand struck Crowler in the head, he started to fuss and say it was impossible. Points of Crowler life 3000 minus 100 equals 2900, and your golem's attack points become your life points due to my Wingman's secret power. Isn't that pretty cool? Jaden pointed his index finger at Crowler, who looked up in fear. Crowler was buried in the debris when his golem, which was still there, broke apart into pieces. Crowler life points. 2900 minus 3000 equals minus 100 equals 0. The theme from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX plays. And that's the game. Teach, I suppose I passed the test. Jaden winked and struck his signature pose before asking. Everyone in the stadium cheered, and Naruto clapped from his hiding place. Naruto thought approvingly, that Jaden is certain is something. I can see why Dad saw potential in him. Crowler stood up after the virtual effect subsided and muttered to himself, there is no way I lost, not to this miscreant. Chazz and his lackey, friends appeared surprised by the turnabout and said it was just bad luck. Alexis nodded from where she sat on the railings at the top of the stadium. Alexis thought to her friend Zane, who just grunted before turning to leave, he has a future here. Cyrus was opening by encouraging Jaden, and Bastion grinned, happy with the outcome. Before a proctor approached Crowler, he complained, at least today is over and there are no more students. Everyone halted and gaped in disbelief as he said, actually, sir, there is one more. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care who this nobody is if they're late, Crowler growled. Naruto thought, oh boy, here it comes, knowing what was going to happen. Nobody. Everyone turned to look for the source of the voice as it spoke over the intercoms. Is he really broadcasting to us with that voice? Shocked, Bastion thought. As a huge hologram materialized in the center of the dueling arena, Seto Kaiba's voice stated icily, I do not believe I would pick a nobody as my godson. On the screen, Seto was wearing a suit, and even though he was seated at a desk, you could see that his fists were clenched and that, despite his composed voice, he was angry. Crowler yelled, Mr. Kaiba, and then he dropped to his knees. In an attempt to curry favor with the man who owned the school and, consequently, his position, Crowler said, pardon my rudeness. What an honor it is to have your presence at our luxurious school. Seto narrowed his eyes and said, Dr. Crowler, I have heard several disturbing rumors about you. Like the fact you seem to fail potential students based on nonsensible reasons like, he failed to address as professor. According to one of the reports. Crowler began to perspire. Shoot. I had no idea that wealthy individuals like Kaiba read reports or even got their hands on them, fearfully, Crowler thought. Leaning forward, Seto asserted, however, I am in a good mood right now. There were several gasps as Seto declared, I wish to see my godson duel so I will overlook the reports for today. Seto interrupted Crowler as he was about to offer a weak justification, such as that late students had no time to waste the teacher's time or resources at Duel Academy. With a hint of threat, Seto said, if my godson does not get to prove his deck today, I might have to start to look over the budget again and make let's say cutbacks starting with the blue dorm. Crowler's perspiration increased. AN5. Shit. Kaiba will have my job if I don't pass him without a test. Well, I don't care what his last name is. Dr. Crowler never makes a fool. I'll just beat him and use that as an excuse to keep him out. Crowler became aware of his current predicament. Before accepting a microphone, Crowler rose from his knees and bowed, graciously, to his host. Crowler declared, well, today is a treat indeed. I decided to make an exception today, allow one more duel to happen today. Will Naruto Mudo please come to the dueling arena now for your practical dueling exam? As though this was his own idea and that Seto Kaiba's gracious nature was what made it possible rather than a threat. Naruto could hear his father's name being whispered excitedly as soon as he emerged from the shadows. That's him, the son of King of Games is here. I wonder if he could get his mom's autograph for me. He felt his eye twitch at the last whisper, and he heard several more. To control his rage, Naruto told himself, I can't kill any of them for hitting on mom. Before long, Naruto moved in front of Crowler and made a courteous bow, which Crowler grudgingly returned. When Cyrus saw the King of Games' own child here at the academy as a possible student, he gasped. This is definitely not what was expected. After hearing the rumors about Yugi's well-known but elusive child, Bastion reflects. Naruto Mudo is said to be easily as strong as a pro-duelist, and the only reason he is not a registered pro-duelist yet is because his parents insisted he comes here first. Chazz and his cronies were attempting to act indifferent. As the other lackey nodded, an obelisk blue boy remarked, yeah, this guy has a family name, but I bet he is just a poser. Right, Chazz? Chazz declared, yeah, I bet Crowler beats him in one turn. After glancing at Naruto's muscular form and whistling, Alexis turned to look at Zane. Zane arched an eyebrow as Alexis said, well, he looks certainly handsome enough to be famous. Zane calmly said, let's see if the kid has the kids to back up the name. Naruto and Crowler took a few steps back before their duel discs came into play. Duel. Both of them yelled, 4,000 Crowler life points. 4,000 Naruto life points. Naruto refrained from rolling his eyes as Crowler pretended to be courteous and said, Mr. Mudo, please make the first move. Naruto pulled out a card and said, right here goes, emergency provisions. 6 cards in Naruto's hand. Mirror Force, Trap, Quick Play Spell, Scapegoat. Celtic Guard, Annoying, 1400-1200. The Magical Warrior, Breaker, 1600-1000. Expert Dark Magician, 1900-1700. Quick Play Spell card for emergencies. After a brief pause for reflection, Naruto exclaimed, I summon Skilled Dark Magician in attack mode. With his staff out, the Skilled Dark Magician, 1900-1700, materialized in front of Naruto. Before 3 cards materialized in his spell and trap zone, Naruto added, plus, I place 3 cards face down. For later. Emergency Provisions. Mirror Force, Scapegoat. Naruto ended his turn by saying, I end my turn. In stands Cyrus nodded as Bastion said, good show. Naruto certainly off to a solid start. Yeah, I heard if that Skilled Dark Magician gets 3 spell counters, he can trade himself for the real Dark Magician, Cyrus giggled. Bastion pondered menacingly, true, but I wonder if Crowler will let it live long enough. Returning with Crowler. My turn, exclaimed Crowler impatiently. Crowler said mockingly, I activate the spell card Destruction. So sorry if you had any good cards in your hand. Card Destruction. Standard spell card. Every card in both players' hands is thrown into the graveyard. Each player draws the same number of cards as are typically discarded. With a grunt, Naruto drew 2 cards by tossing out the annoying Celtic Guard and Breaker. In contrast, the Crowler drew 5 cards after discarding 5. It appears that there won't be any more new students this year, Crowler pondered joyfully. First I activate Pot of Greed, said Crowler. The standard spell card, Pot of Greed. Draw 2 cards. On Crowler Duel Disc Draw 2, a green pot materialized, which Crowler gladly picked up. Now I activate Monster Reborn to bring back Trojan Horse. Reborn monster, pick 1 monster from the graveyard of either player. Use a special summons to attack or defend the target on your side of the field. The Trojan Horse, 1600-1200. When summoning an Earth-type monster as a tribute, this card can be viewed as 2 monsters. Alexis said, he would only bring back that monster. Zane grinned and remarked, if he wished to tribute it as it was a special summon. As his Trojan Horse neighed and then vanished, Crowler yelled, now I offer my Trojan Horse as a sacrifice to summon my all-powerful Ancient Gear Golem. The enormous Ancient Gear Golem took its place, glaring down at Naruto, who regarded it coolly. 3000 Ancient Gear Golem. Wow! Crowler summoned Ancient Gear Golem on his first turn, exclaimed an enthusiastic raw yellow student. Crowler declared, however, Mr. Muto, for such a guest I cannot simply summon one of my ace monsters, I must summon the ace monster of my deck. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Crowler exclaimed, from my hand I activate Polymerization to fuse my Ancient Gear Golem, Ancient Gear Knight and Ancient Gear Soldier from my hand, as his dual disc began to glow. He is really summoning his ace. A monster whose attack power rival Seto Kaiba's own Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, Zane exclaimed with astonishment. Crowler exclaimed excitedly, behold! My ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, as an even larger gear monster materialized beside its golem sibling. Golem of Ultimate Ancient Gear, 4400 3400s, Ancient Gear Golem, plus 2, Ancient Gear Monsters. Fusion must be summoned in defense mode, it can deal piecing damage to monsters. The opponent cannot use spell or trap cards during an attack until the damage step is finished. You can summon 1, Ancient Gear Golem, from your graveyard without following any summoning conditions if this card is destroyed. With 2 powerhouse monsters that could take on Naruto's lone monster, Crowler no longer held any cards. Now a little concerned, Alexis said, wow, Crowler really is pulling out all the stops. Oh course. I wonder how Naruto Muto will pull through as those golems stop traps and spells when they attack. Zane responded with a smile. Crowler yelled, now my golem attacked the magician with mechanized pummel, while his golem was in action. It dealt Naruto 1100 points of damage when it struck magician with its enormous fist, who had no defense. Life points for Naruto. 4000 minus 1100 equals 2900 with a grunt. Naruto swiftly used a spell card that the others couldn't see. Crowler sighed before a huge smile spread across his face. Now, Mr. Muto, I hope your brief stay here. I am sure you would have made a wonderful student if you were not late, but it's over now, he said. With everyone on the edge of their seats, Crowler declared, now Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem attack. Ultimate Ancient Pummel, as his second Gear Golem raised his fist at Naruto. A huge cloud of smoke appeared as the fists collided. When the smoke cleared, Naruto's life point gauge and his still active duel desk were visible. 500 is Naruto's life points. Zane showed a rare look of shock as his eyes widened. Alexis questioned incredulously, Naruto still in this? With relief, Cyrus questioned, how is this possible? Bastion pointed and yelled, wait! Look at Naruto's side of the field, as everyone's attention was drawn to an active spell card. Crowler yelled suspiciously, impossible! My ultimate ancient gear golem shut down spell and trap cards. Naruto huffed and said, not quite. They only shut my spells and traps down during their attacks. I can still use them after and in between your attacks. He then got to his feet. I used emergency provisions after your first golem's attack to ditch my mirror force and scapegoat and gain back 2,000 life points before your second one hit my life points directly, said Naruto. AN6. Quick play spell card. Emergency provisions send a variety of additional trap or spell cards to the cemetery. For every card sent by this effect, you will receive 1,000 life points. With emergency provisions, Naruto's life point is 2,900 plus 2,000 equals 4,900. After an attack, Naruto's life points are 4,900 minus 4,400 equals 500. After a brief gasp, Crowler's expression changed to one of admiration. Other students began discussing Naruto's final move, and Crowler responded, very impressive Mr. Muto. I end my turn. That was awesome. Great job, exclaimed Jaden's joyful voice. Bastion complimented Cyrus, who nodded, saying, yes, that was very impressive to use that gap between attacks to get between their effects. Cyrus gasped as Bastion remarked somberly, however now Naruto is a bind. Those golems do piercing damage, so if Naruto has a solid defense his life points won't be safe either way. Leaning back and crossing her arms beneath her ample bosom, Alexis remarked, impressed, that was quick thinking on Naruto's part. As Alexis nodded, Zane grunted, let's see if he can have a comeback next turn or there won't be another one. As he pulled out a card, Naruto said, okay, my turn again, gotta make it count. Naruto deals 3 cards. Card of Demise, spell card. Greedy Pot, spell card, the spell card Dark Magic Veil. Using his father's and Atem's mantra, Naruto muttered, okay, I need some luck so here goes. Heart of the cards guide me. Naruto said, I place 2 cards face down. Then I activate the spell card of Demise which allows me draw till I am holding 5 cards, said Naruto. Card of Demise, standard spell card. AN7. Draw cards until you have 5 in your hand. After activating this card, discard all of the cards you were holding during the 5th standby phase. Since Naruto had no cards when he activated the card of Demise, a guillotine appeared over his hand as he drew 5. As he looked at his hand and received a giggle in return, Naruto remarked, of course I need to discard my hand in 5 turns but it won't last that long. This made him smile. Naruto declared, now I reveal my face-down pot of greed card, as it turned over and revealed a green pot similar to the one Crowler had previously used. When his hand reached 7, Naruto said, now I draw 2 cards. This is a great time to wrap things up, Naruto thought. Now I activate from my hand. Poison of the Old Man. And I choose to gain 1,200 life points back, Naruto said. Life points for Naruto. 500 plus 1,200 equals 1,700 Crowler sneered. Not much it will do you my young friend. Hardly enough to taste on. Then he noticed Naruto grinning. Naruto declared, I activate my other down card. Dark Magic Veil. As a dark circle materialized on his field. It glowed purple and had a complex star formula. Veil of Dark Magic, standard spell card. Give 1,000 life points. Take 1 dark spellcaster monster out of your graveyard or hand. He needed life points to play his Veil card, which is why he got them back, Crowler realized. Naruto exclaimed, now from my hand I summon the all-powerful and unique Dark Magician Girl, as the circle began to glow even more. What? Dark Magician Girl? Impossible. She is the cutest card in existence. Please marry me Dark Magician Girl. Did different students yell in anticipation? A dark figure appeared in front of Naruto's side of the field, and the circle grew before disappearing. Because of her height and curves, the figure was obviously female. As she materialized, a light emerged from her body. Her right arm revealed her staff and the same sleeves, while her left hand revealed her pink and blue sleeves. Then, as she radiated strength, her skirt and thighs were exposed. Then her lovely blonde face with her green eyes and sorcerer hat emerged, followed by hearts and sparkles as she whirled around and her whole body became illuminated. Remember her initial summons in Yu-Gi-Oh! When she appeared, almost the whole male audience cheered and yelled as she puffed out her chest and giggled before winking to complete her summoning. As the lovely Duel spirit smiled and took in her fans' acclaim, she turned to face the crowd and began waving, intensifying the shouting for a few minutes. Bastion was talking in shock as this was going on. Bastion said to Cyrus, "Incredible, I thought only the king of games had the dark magician girl in his deck, but I guess his son has her too." Bastion laughed nervously as he noticed Cyrus hanging over the railing, attempting to attract the dark magician girl's attention. Zane was unfazed by the monster's appearance, but he was taken aback by his younger brother's response. Alexis whistled, amazed that there was a monster that was simultaneously adorable and seductive. Mana spun around before turning to face Naruto, winking and kissing him in the air as she positioned herself. Dark Magician Girl, 2017 thousandths. The Dark Magician Girl hovered behind Naruto and seemed to grab the spell card he was about to use in her hand, preventing him from using it. To everyone's surprise, Naruto said, "Okay, now I will finish this. I activate the spell card," before being interrupted. She made herself appear even more attractive by pouting and placing her other hand on her hip in disapproval. As he released the spell card he was going to use and allowed her to point at one, Naruto grinned amusedly. She smiled at him, and Naruto nodded before returning to her position, much to the confusion of the audience. The only person who believed Dark Magician Girl was doing anything was Jaden, who assumed it was a glitch in the Kaiba Corp gaming data service because he had winged Karibo. Naruto said, "Sorry, I activate this card instead. Dark Burning Attack. This allows my Dark Magician Girl to destroy all your monsters right away," as he placed the spell card in his duel desk. Attack with Dark Burning, standard spell card. Destroy the face-up monsters that your opponent is controlling if you are in control of Dark Magician Girl. As purple and black electricity flowed into a dark red orb of power created by Mana's staff, she let out a shout. Naruto yelled, "Now get them," as Mana waved her staff, causing the orb to crash into Crowler monsters. The two golems groaned and then burst into a massive explosion of dark magical power. HMPH, very impressive but not good enough. I activate my ultimate Ancient Gear Golem effect. If it's destroyed I can summon an Ancient Gear Golem from my graveyard, stated Crowler. Naruto grinned and returned to the Golem game. Naruto said, "Now from my hand I activate Tribute of the Doom. Now by discarding one card I get to destroy your revived Golem and send it right back to the graveyard," as he used the spell card. Before the Golem was dragged into the ground and back into the graveyard, it groaned and several bandages appeared beneath it. Crowler, now helpless, yelled in terror. "Now so my Dark Magician Girl can finish this, I play my final spell card Excalibur," Naruto exclaimed as Mana's staff vanished and she repeatedly swung a sword. Excalibur, a continuous spell card. The attack points of a monster under your control double. Ignore the draw phrases. Destroy this card if you draw a card or if the monster that gets this effect is taken out of the field. Level 6 Dark Magician Girl, 1700ths. Seeing that the enhanced girl was now strong enough to destroy him in a single blow, Crowler begged, "Now Mr. Muto, we can talk this over. No need to be hasty." He saw only the dark smiles on Mana's and Naruto's faces as they shook their heads. "Now my lovely magician, please show him your magic. End this now, Sword of Dark Burning Attack," Naruto yelled. With a loud scream, Mana directed her magic toward her new sword and then charged forward, unleashing the magic as a beam of power that struck Crowler as he screamed. Crowler cried out in agony, "No," before passing out. Crowler life points. Oh, 4,000. Everyone's jaws dropped for a moment before Naruto had to be picked up for his crucial one-turn comeback finish. Even though Naruto had used up all of his life points the previous turn, he had used up all of Dr. Crowler's in a single turn. Jaden, whose wild personality allowed him to say exactly what he thought without worrying about what others thought, was the first to recover from their shock. Jaden yelled through his hands, "Bro, that was so awesome," as Naruto turned around and grinned modestly. With his eyes closed and his hand stroking his hair, Naruto said uneasily, I guess I did okay? Alright. That was amazing. But I'm curious as to what card he was going to play before his duel disc failed." Bastion grinned as he thought. He refused to accept that Naruto's Dark Magician Girl card did anything because there was unquestionable evidence of the existence of duel spirits. Naruto waved his hand a few times, and soon everyone in the stadium was applauding and cheering. Thank you all. As Naruto looked at his deck, he imagined Mana blowing him a kiss and winking at him. Anytime. Mana waved in approval, in other places. As they watched the duels live on the monitors, a man with dark blue hair sat in a chair across from Seto and remarked, "That was an amazing duel, Seto." He had grown considerably in the years since Pharaoh Atem was permitted to rest, and he was now easily as tall as Seto. Since Seto hadn't changed physically, it was frequently joked that he still had eternal youth. AN2. With a slight smile and fierce pride in his eyes, Seto said, "HMPH. I will admit he does make me proud, Makuba." Makuba grinned back. When Seto turned around, Makuba said, "Seto," to his older brother. "Yes?" Seto asked, resting his elbows on his desk and his face in his hands. With a curious expression, Makuba questioned, what card was Naruto going to play when his dark magician girl stopped him? Seto grinned and said, "Well, we both know that dual spirits are real due to our little adventures with Yugi and his friends. That means that dark magician girl card houses an actual dual spirit who are sentient. If I had to guess, I would say." Makuba raised an eyebrow in response. Yugi and his friends are currently watching the duel live from a different location. Seeing her husband growl, Mai winked and teased, How dreamy, maybe I should give Naruto-kun a little reward later for his performance today?" Joey shot back, "Mai, that's not very funny." Mai laughed. Mai kissed her on the cheek and said, "I am just joking, love. I would never cheat on you, my soulmate." She then turned around and grinned. When T's eye twitched in rage, Mai smiled and said, "Besides, I don't want Mama Bear trying to tear me a new one for corrupting her little boy, after all." T was enraged when Mai made fun of her only child, even though she loved Mai like a sister. "You little," T hissed. Yugi laughed, then smiled. Yugi turned around when Joey called out to him, saying simply and proudly, "That's my boy." As everyone became serious, T sighed, "Too bad Tristan, Duke, and Rebecca were too busy to come watch Naruto big debut." Because of how close his small group was to his parents, Naruto would still refer to Tristan and Duke as uncles even though he was not nearly as close to them as he was to Joey. Rebecca was a pain point for the group because, despite Yugi's gentle attempts to explain that he still wanted to be friends, she became aloof after he had chosen T. Yugi swore that his grandfather looked 40 years younger when Naruto was born, thinking with pride, "Grandfather will be thrilled when I tell him the news." To Yugi's embarrassment, he had even declared that, in his opinion, Yugi's greatest accomplishment was becoming a father. As everyone turned to face the thoughtful-looking king of game, Joey questioned, "Hey Yugi, what card was Naruto going to play before his dark magician girl card freaked out?" As Joey and Mai's eyes grew wide, Yugi thought, I can't be sure as we couldn't see into his hand, but if I had to guess, it was that card." As Yugi nodded, Mai exclaimed, "Wait, you mean one of those cards that Pegasus made specifically for Naruto-kun?" As T watched Naruto on screen with a maternally loving expression, looking rather sheepish, Yugi remarked, "Yup. Pegasus finds Naruto fascinating after all." T sighed and remarked, "My little boy is growing up so fast." As he began to describe what might have happened, Yugi remarked, "If he played that card, Naruto would have still won, but maybe a more dramatic way. Suppose Naruto had used the other card. What would have happened?" Naruto said, "Okay, now I will finish this. Now I play this spell card," as his hand shrank to just 4 cards and he played a spell card. Naruto declared, "I play the spell card, the Eye of Timaeus," as a huge green dragon with a scar over its eye roared and a bright light appeared. Crowler exclaimed, "What is that card?" in shock, and the majority of the audience joined in. "Wait, I recall reading about a time when Darts was a threat to the world. Seto Kaiba, Joey Wheeler, and Yugi Muto all possessed cards that were supposed to call forth dragons that could compete with the Egyptian gods. However, I've heard that Pegasus never produced a copy for distribution, and the cards vanished once the threat had passed." Bastion's eyes were wide as he thought. AN3. Naruto gave the order. Now Timaeus combined with Dark Magician Girl to form. As Mana floated toward Timaeus and a bright white light briefly appeared before disappearing. Instead of wearing her robes, Mana was now riding on Timaeus' back while holding a single-handed sword and shield. She was also wearing silver armor. Naruto exclaimed, "Dark Magician Girl, the Dragon Knight," as Mana shouted while brandishing her sword and Timaeus roared. With hearts in their eyes, half of her fanbase exclaimed, "Wow, Dark Magician Girl is even prettier." She is still pretty, but the dragon seems off," the other half muttered as they scanned her. When Cyrus saw his favorite duel monster card in a different form, he had a hilarious expression that was halfway between pure joy and pure terror. Dragon Knight's Dark Magician Girl AN4. Level 7, 2600 1700. Dark Characteristic Dragon, Fusion, and Effect Description. The Eye of Timaeus is the only effect that can special summon this card, and once it is summoned, its summon cannot be negated or destroyed. One card should be thrown out of your hand and sent to the graveyard on the field. Quick play effect. With a smug tone, Crowler teased, HMPH, impressive, your little girly card got a new look and attack boost, but she is still no match for my golems, believing he was safe. Smiling, Naruto said, ah, but she has a special ability you might listen to Professor. Mana mirrored his grin on the field. Crowler exclaimed, an effect? With concern. As he threw away tribute to the doomed, Naruto exclaimed, yup. If I discard one card from my hand she can do this. There were now 3 cards in his hand. Dark Magician Girl the Dragon Knight instantly swung her sword in front of her. A blue beam appeared in front of the mouth of Timaeus, or at least the dragon she rode on, and it roared. The ancient gear golem was shot at and exploded, disappearing into thin air. Crowler cried out, my golem, while Naruto grinned. Naruto revealed, guess what, teach? Her effect is not once per turn either, as he was down to 2 cards and sent Dark Burning Attack to the graveyard. Timaeus roared once more, directing another beam at the other golem as Mana swung her sword. With a moan, Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem disappeared into thin air. Crowler exclaimed, no, my ultimate golem, before noticing something. Crowler yelled, wait, why didn't my golem effect activate? While Naruto shrugged. Naruto said, my new night ability sends the cards directly to the graveyard, so effect that activate when they are destroyed will not activate. Crowler's face turned pale as his last line of defense vanished. Crowler defiantly remarked, well, I will have some life points left afterwards, so it's not over yet, while Naruto smiled and took one of his final 2 cards and placed it in his right hand. Naruto revealed, not after this one. My final spell card Excalibur, as he used the card. Excalibur standard spell card, 1 monster on your side of the field's attack is doubled. While this is on the field, skip the draw phrases. If a card is drawn or the chosen monster is taken out of the field, this card is destroyed. Dragon Knight, Dark Magician Girl, 5200 1700. As Mana's sword transformed into a longer, more graceful weapon in her hand, she let out a powerful cry. Crowler made a smooth attempt to ask, please hold on, Mr. Muto, surely we can talk this out. Naruto nodded to Dark Magician Girl the Dragon Knight, who nodded back, mockingly saying, sorry, but we are out of mercy for today. As she slashed and let out a lot of pink energy, her blade turned pink, and she shouted. Timaeus then let out another beam of blue. As they shot in Crowler's direction, the 2 beams circled one another before joining to form a purple beam. Crowler cried out, no, as a huge explosion occurred. Points of Crowler life equals 4000 minus 5200 equals minus 1200, returning to the present. Why didn't Mana want to transform into her night form, I wonder? Naruto thought as he briefly looked at his deck. Naruto was unaware that Mana had a motive for stopping her partner from using that card. HMPH. Naruto already possessed those legendary dragon cards, so he didn't have to disclose them. Mana was quite offended to think that Naruto would be displaying one of his secret aces on his special day. In addition, that armor is really sweaty and annoying. In them, I can't move around freely. As Timaeus in his deck started to perspire, Mana whimpered in her head. This woman, Timaeus thought sourly. Given that Timaeus is larger than me, how is Naruto supposed to notice me? I mean, I'm not conceited, but I know that when I'm called upon in this capacity, I take the stage. Mana thought proudly, something Naruto had no idea about. When Seto came back on screen, he was looking down at Crowler in frustration. Then, for the tiniest of seconds, he looked at Naruto and smiled. Seto calmly but subtly challenged anyone to disagree with him when he said, well, I believe my godson has proven himself well over in his duel. Crowler was on his knees, defeated, and no one spoke. As the students began to buzz with anticipation, Seto said, I believe with this test and his perfect score Naruto has earned his spot in Obelisk Blue. With a broad smile, Alexis turned to face Zane, who was grinning slightly. Alexis teased, looks like you will get a new rival this year on your final one, Zane. Zane scoffed, but he still appeared to be quite happy. Alexis rolled her eyes in jest as Zane asserted, perhaps. He certainly is skilled if nothing else. As Zane arched an eyebrow, Alexis observed, "Ah. You should not hide how pleased you are. Nobody is right now at your level right now." After Alexis's eyes widened, she turned away and Zane shot back, "Please, if anyone is pleased it would be you." Alexis stammered, "I have no idea what you are talking about." Zane grinned. Gazing down at Naruto, Alexis thought, he is certainly interesting. With the exception of Jaden, who was unaware of the ranking and dorm system prior to attending the school, everyone else was giddily discussing Naruto's immediate promotion to Obelisk Blue. Seto and the others turned to scowl at Crowler, who had gotten back up and coughed. With a broad, obviously phony smile, Crowler declared, "Well, I will admit the duel was exceptional." "Why so little?" Hulmulating in front of the Seto Kaiba. "When I had a single ancient gear golem, I was already defeated by a nameless brat. I had my ace out when this well-known brat beat me," Crowler thought indignantly. Everyone began to whisper as Crowler yelled, "I must protest. Naruto Muto arrived late for his practice exam." Seto's narrowed eyes caused Crowler to swallow. In the meantime, Naruto was simply stretching and grinning, unfazed by Crowler's remarks. As Crowler swallowed, Seto asked icily, "And what is the problem?" As if it were a tennis match, everyone's eyes were on Crowler and Seto. "It would be bad precedent if we let a student into the higher dorms who cannot arrive on time for their practice exams," Crowler said. "My godson had a perfect score on his written exam. The only other person who got a score like this was Bastion Misawa. His practical exam against your best deck showed his level much higher than most Obelisk Blue members had on their practical exam," Seto said quietly as Crowler searched for assistance. "Well, I mean," Crowler stammered, quickly realizing that he would appear defensive with such outcomes for Naruto's benefit. Naruto unexpectedly chose to speak. As everyone turned to face the younger Muto, Naruto chirped, "I agree." To everyone's surprise, Naruto clarified, "With Professor Crowler." Crowler asked, stunned, thinking Naruto would challenge him on this. "You do?" he asked. As Seto glared at Naruto, Naruto retorted, "Yup, it would be unfair of me to start at the top." Naruto. Seto hissed a little because his godson was treating him disrespectfully in public with his carefree demeanor. Seto's eyes narrowed but he nodded as Naruto said, "Godfather. I realize that Professor Crowler has a point." Seto asked his godson, who nodded in response, "Explain." Everyone gaped at Naruto's mature and well-considered response as he explained, "I got careless and there should be consequences for that. In a professional duel this would not be acceptable for a duelist to be late for their scheduled duel. I was late, so placing me in Obelisk Blue regardless of my score would set a bad precedent for the school respectively." Even Crowler, who didn't like Naruto, had some respect for him because he was more mature and honest than the majority of his peers in his circumstances. Alexis said, "Was not expecting that." Zane's expression was unreadable as he gazed at Naruto. "Well, I don't think anyone has chosen to be in a lower dorm before," Zane concurred. As both of his lackeys concurred, Chazz sneered, "What a loser. Why wouldn't he want to join the elites?" The audience shivered as they swore fire came out of Naruto and Kaiba's eyes as they glared at one another during their subsequent staring match with Seto. A storm appeared between them, making it a literal struggle of wills. Seto let out a sigh after a minute and then waved his hand. Naruto bowed respectfully to Seto, who said, "Fine, if you want to build yourself to the top, I won't stop you." With courtesy, Naruto said, "Thank you, grandfather. However, I still will not take anything less than the best from you. If I find out you are slacking off there will be consequences," Seto warned when Naruto nodded. Naruto said, "I understand." Seto nodded and then switched off the monitor. Seto smiled slightly, and Makuba said, "Wow, you have gotten softer, big bro. I didn't think you would let Naruto intentionally start from the bottom if he asked." "Make me proud, Naruto," Kaiba thought, grinning. "Very well. The entrant exams are over. You have been assigned to your dorms and uniforms have been made for all. Please come to the helicopter pad at the top to get to the actual academy and your new home," Crowler said once he had his bearings. "This will be enjoyable." As he followed the group, oblivious to the rumors circulating about him, Naruto thought, "I am assuming that Jaden will be in Slifer too, as it appears he was late too, so he would not be placed in a higher dorm even if he defeated Crowler." "Bro. Looks like we will dorm mates," exclaimed Jaden, proudly sporting his new Slifer Red jacket. Naruto grinned and said, "Indeed. I hope we can be good friends, Jaden." His new jacket was primarily black with red sleeves to represent his dorm colors. Jaden grinned broadly and said, "Of course. Yugi is my role model. I mean he is the king of games, before glaring at Naruto. Jaden held up a hand and said, but don't think just because you are his son you will be the next king of games. That title is mine, Naruto shrugged. As he boarded the helicopter that would take them to the actual dorm, Naruto said, I never claimed I would be the next king of games but best of luck Jaden. Naruto continued, oh and Bastion was it? I am sure we will duel in the future. Raw Yellow's eyes widened in shock before a smirk emerged. As Naruto merely waved, Bastion remarked, I should hope so. I plan to fully map out a deck just for you when the time comes. Jaden and Cyrus, two other Slifers, were in the elevator with Naruto. Cyrus could hardly speak to Naruto without stuttering. Confidence problems, eh? Naruto sighed as he considered this. As he observed Cyrus becoming more comfortable with Jaden, Naruto remarked, but he seems like to be friendly enough. He was watching the helicopter absently. They soon reached the main Duel Academy island, which is where the dormitories were located. Before the driver of the helicopter took off, each of them received a handheld PDA containing the schedule and contact details. Naruto remarked, pointing to the forest, looks like Slifer's dorm is that way. The haber they landed at seemed to be close to the Slifer Red dorm. Jaden exclaimed rather enthusiastically, woo, time to see our new dorm, while Cyrus half smiled. Yay! Cyrus gave a grudging fist bump. Cyrus thought desperately, I hope it's not as bad as the rumor says. After their quick stroll, it turned out to be worse than the rumors had claimed. The dorm was essentially two-story motels with 4 or so rooms on each floor. Cyrus exclaimed, this place sucks. It looks like an outhouse with a deck, while Jaden merely chuckled. Jaden grinned and said, wow, I guess they got us good, huh? Despite his public persona, Seto was kind to the staff who worked to care for his family. Naruto reflected dryly, I'm pretty sure the servants at the Kaiba mansion would faint if they had to clean over here. On occasion, Naruto stayed at the mansion, especially when Seto and Makuba were listening to him. Naruto and the new Slifers reluctantly entered the welcome room, after staring at the gloomy location for a minute, as if hoping it would magically improve, especially for Naruto, who knew Seto had smuggled millions of Kaiba Corp funds into the island. Presenting himself with a broad smile, Professor Banner said, welcome, welcome. So we have 3 new Slifers this year. Well, I am Professor Lyman Banner and I am the head of the Slifer Red dorm. Jaden grinned and said, hey Professor. I am Jaden Yuki and I will be the next king of games. Banner merely grinned. As Jaden laughed, Banner said, I see, well confidence is easy to show but skill is another thing my young friend. Banner smiled kindly at Cyrus as he stammered, hello. My name is Cyrus Truesdale. As Banner continued to stare at Cyrus, he said, ah, the younger brother of the school's ace Zane Truesdale. I see. Well, I hope you will find this a fun place. Banner exclaimed, and who is our blonde friend in the back? As Naruto sighed and was gently prodded forward by Jaden. Naruto began, I am, but Jaden cut him off. Jaden exclaimed, get this, he is the son of Yugi and godson of Kaiba. While Naruto gave him a stern look for getting too excited. Banner tilted his head after whispering, Naruto Muto? I heard the rumors of course, but to think he would come to the academy is another thing. Naruto bit his lip before glaring at Banner. But wait, with your skills surely even as a first year you would start in raw yellow if not obelisk blue? Banner asked. My dad is famous now but he started at the bottom and worked his way up. He was not handled titles or prestige. He worked for it. I want to make him proud and work my way up as well. Naruto said with a warm smile. With noticeable pride, Banner remarked, very well put, Naruto. I see you do not have a chip on your shoulder from your father's success. As Naruto started to perspire, Cyrus exclaimed, wow. I mean you are so different from the rich kids who think they are better than Slifer Reds by default. Jaden exclaimed, anyways teach. Where is the grub? I am starving. While Banner laughed nervously. Before waving his hands, Banner acknowledged, well, you see. It might be a bit different than what you were expecting. Banner reassured them, not that there isn't something for you all, as Naruto's face was rather flat and Cyrus and Jaden shot him accusing glances. Banner remarked as he hurried away, oh, I have to wake up Huffington right away. Cyrus's face sighed. As Jaden cocked his head, Cyrus remarked sullenly, well, this is not how I expected my first day of Duel Academy to go. As Cyrus became a little embarrassed, Jaden inquired inquisitively, what did you expect bro? The flat expression on Naruto's face made Cyrus wince. I kinda expected being in raw yellow with loads of fangirls to cheer me on, he said. As Cyrus's head fell, Naruto remarked, "Huh, I don't think Bastion, who is a raw yellow, has the same aspirations as you do, Cyrus." As everyone turned to a door on the opposite side of the room, a weary feminine voice said, "Well, I should hope not. Trying to get fangirls would be a very poor excuse on why to join Duel Academy." She smiled as she left the room, saying, "Hello, my name is Midori Hibiki, and I suppose you call me the co-head of Slifer Red." Cyrus blushed and looked down as Jaden grinned broadly. As he observed the newcomer to the dorm, Naruto grinned. Hibiki's long black hair framed her face with multiple strands that reached her lower back. Her smile appeared genuine and unforced, and her dark eyes glowed with kindness and laughter. She was dressed in white pants and the standard Slifer Red jacket. She looked to be in her late 20s, so she also had a mature form. In general, Naruto found her to be quite attractive and curvaceous. AN2. As Midori's eye twitched, Naruto smiled and said, "Hello, Ms. Hibiki. The sister of famous American world champion Koyo Hibiki." When she noticed Naruto's eye twitching, Midori's smile turned to a smirk and she shot back, "Hello, Naruto Muto. Son of world champion Yugi Muto and godson to Kaiba Corp head Seto Kaiba." Jaden was simply thrilled because he failed to notice the slight tension between the two Slifer Reds, who were related to well-known world duelists. Midori turned to Jaden and grinned. "So cool, I am huge fan of Koyo Hibiki. He is one of my heroes besides Yugi himself," Jaden exclaimed. Jaden gave Midori a thumbs up, and she said, "I see. I will have to let him know I am supervising one of his fans this year." Because she was accustomed to the looks of younger boys lusting after her, Midori also spoke kindly to Cyrus while ignoring his embarrassed glances. "Oh good. Glad you have met Ms. Hibiki," Banner exclaimed with relief as he re-entered the room carrying a Slifer Red that Naruto thought resembled a koala. As Chumlee simply yawned, Banner said, "Everyone, please meet Chumlee Huffington. Here is Jaden, Cyrus, and Naruto, your new dorm mates for this year." Banner sighed and Chumlee said dejectedly, "Hello. I hope we can have fun together in the loser dorm." Midori put her hands on her hips in frustration and told him sharply, "Chumlee, this is not the loser dorm. It's merely the first step on students' ascension at Duel Academy." Chumlee yawned and said flatly, as though he had heard the speech dozens of times, "Yeah, I know." Jaden exclaimed, "Nice to meet you," while Chumlee nodded. Cyrus nervously replied, "Ditto." Chumlee simply sat down at the largest table in the room. "Anyways, dinner time," Banner exclaimed as Naruto sat next to Jaden, who was sitting next to Cyrus, on one side of the table, and Banner, Midori, and Chumlee on the other. The dinner consisted of a single piece of fish, a small bowl of rice for each person, and a small plate of soy sauce for dipping. Banner and Midori had an extra bowl of rice and a piece of fish, which Naruto saw. As heads of the dorm, is that all they receive in addition to that? Naruto pondered gravely. "This is dinner?" Cyrus exclaimed, his eyes welling with tears. Chumlee sighed and said, "Yup, enjoy." Even though everyone could see that Midori was a little irritated by the Slifer dorm's poor quality, she asserted, "Look. It might not seem like much, but it's quality over quantity, right?" When everyone gave him stern looks, Jaden laughed and said, "Well, at least it's cooked right." As Banner and Hibiki sighed but did not, Chumlee said rather glumly, "Get used to it. Unless you manage to at least raw yellow, this is the best you can expect from our dorm." With a sigh, Naruto took a tiny metal plate that was about half the size of his hand out of his pocket. As everyone stared at him in confusion, Naruto remarked, "Guess it's as good as time as any." Hibiki questioned, "Time for what?" before Naruto threw the plate on the ground. Before the plate hit the floor, there was a puff of smoke that surprised everyone. When the smoke cleared, a huge refrigerator with lights and displays on but no cables was visible. Everyone stood up in shock as Banner yelled, "My word, in shock." "Is that a fridge?" exclaimed Jaden. The screen beeped in response to Naruto's quick taps, and he nodded. "Kinda. It's actually a prototype of self-sustaining refrigerator that Kaiba Corp has been developing," Naruto told them, pushing the wheeled refrigerator into the kitchen, which was actually just a stove, a few mostly empty cupboards, and a very tiny fridge. When Naruto peered out, everyone's jaws dropped. Naruto rhetorically questioned, "What, you think Kaiba Corp can't make other appliances besides dual discs?" AN4. Naruto shook his head while Jaden scratched his head and said, Yeah?" As he opened the door to reveal a slight breeze, Naruto told them, This prototype is still in its early development, so I am basically a field tester to show the company what it does with actual food and drinks outside a theoretical setting. The refrigerator was stocked neatly with a variety of drinks, meats, vegetables, and other ingredients. Banner was shocked and said, "Wait, you said self-sustaining? So, this can run without electricity running through it?" As he took several vegetables out of the refrigerator and began chopping them up while the others sat back at the table, Naruto acknowledged, "Technically, or at least in theory. It's still rather new, but it does use renewable consistent energy to keep the products fresh and safe even after the normal expiration dates." Cyrus dropped his head in disappointment as Naruto added sternly, "Before you ask, I won't tell you the energy source as it's proprietary to Kaiba Corp and it's patented." Chumlee swallowed as Naruto threatened, "And this has a security system in place, so only I can open the fridge so people don't try to steal food from it." Jaden exclaimed excitedly, "Well, talk about high tech," while Naruto nodded. Banner made the decision to inquire, "How much would buying this remarkable piece of technically cost?" Naruto smiled broadly at them and said, "About 1 million yen, roughly 10,000 US. Everyone yelled, "Eh?" simultaneously, and Naruto arched an eyebrow. As he began to cook, Naruto said angrily, "What? I told you this is a prototype and mass production has not yet started. We are still testing it out right now with mine. Of course I am not going to give this for free or anything." As Naruto smiled and peered out, Hibiki worriedly said, "Naruto, you are a student. You should not have to cook for yourself, let alone the dorm." Naruto reassured them, "Don't worry about it. I like cooking. To me it's a hobby rather than a chore." Hibiki and Banner exchanged glances. Banner sighed and said, "Well, if you are sure." Naruto chirped, "Totally," while he was still cooking behind the door. Jaden made the decision to learn more about Naruto while the group waited and noticed some delectable scents coming from the door. Everybody leaned in to hear Jaden's question, "Hey bro, who taught you how to cook? Was it Seto Kaiba?" Everyone was shocked to hear Naruto laugh. Naruto shuddered and said, "Please. Seto might be a great inventor and amazing duelist, but he would fail cooking class 100% of the time." Naruto thought, "The last time I swore he almost burned the kitchen down," recalling the smoke and burning pots while Kaiba appeared as composed as possible. Seto raised an eyebrow and gazed down at the charred food, thinking, It seems that the cookingware malfunctioned." Chumlee chose to inquire, "So, who taught you to cook?" With tears in his eyes, Naruto said warmly, "My mom. She might not a great duelist, but she is an amazing mom. She taught lots of other things besides dueling, like cooking, gardening, various board games and other things." Naruto smiled broadly. In his mind, a red-haired Kushina grinned warmly, and Naruto thought, "It probably is what mom would have been like if she raised me." She was quickly replaced by a beaming and smiling T, who demonstrated how to use oil for cooking to a much younger Naruto. Everyone fell silent as they heard tales and rumors about the fabled Seto Kaiba and Yugi Muto, but based on Naruto's tone, it appeared that he respected his mother even more. After a short while, Naruto emerged carrying multiple plates of fried rice, different vegetables, steamed tofu, and sweet and sour shrimp, with Chumlee's stomach there to remind them it was dinner time. As everyone was in awe of the amount of food Naruto prepared and its exceptional quality, he joked, "I think this is more of a welcome package." To Naruto's chagrin, everyone sobbed that evening as they stuffed their bellies with what was dubbed the best they ever ate. After Naruto cooked against his will while Jaden, Cyrus, and Chumlee shared a room in bunk beds, the group came to the unanimous conclusion that Naruto should have his own room. Since it was still a few hours before the lights went out, Naruto joined them in their room. At approximately 9 o'clock in the evening, Jaden had a few messages on his PDA while Chumlee, Cyrus, and Naruto quickly glanced over. As he read the message aloud, Jaden exclaimed, "Hey, I think it's Chazz." Chumlee and Cyrus gulped as Jaden read, "Hey Slifer Slacker. Come to the public dueling arena to settle things unless you are chicken. We shall both ante our best cards to make it interesting, from you know who." Jaden exclaimed, "Sweetness. Now I can settle things with Chazz tonight. I am so excited," while Cyrus watched in horror. It was Cyrus who stammered, "Aren't you afraid? If you lose your best card." As Cyrus's head fell, Jaden said indifferently, I won't lose then. Easy at that." Everyone turned to look at the blonde, and Naruto sighed, "You are totally missing the point, Jaden. Come on bro. I have to accept the challenge, besides I won't lose," Jaden complained, stamping his feet. With everyone staring at him indifferently, Naruto questioned, "Have you read the rulebook on the PDA?" Naruto sighed and opened the PDA rulebook attachment, saying, I will take that as a no. As everyone gaped, Naruto read out, Rule 1. No duels will be permitted after 10 p.m. Rule 5. No anti-duels unless given explicit permission by the Chancellor in a supervised setting. Even Jaden appeared terrified as Naruto stated gravely, if Jaden and Chazz get caught dueling at midnight they both could be expelled on the spot for violating rule number 1. Plus, the anti-rule is illegal without the Chancellor, so if one of you lost and got reported you would both be in big trouble. Jaden sank to the ground. Naruto gave Jaden a disinterested look as he said, but what about Chazz? Won't he be waiting for me at the duel arena? Naruto said, extending his arms, let him wait there all night. It's not all fault if he gets caught essentially trespassing. As the group agreed, Chumlee added, he's right. If Chazz does something dumb, it's his head not ours on the line. Naruto wished his fellow Slifers a restful night's sleep before making his way back to his bedroom. As Naruto went to sleep, he thought, but if his actions are any indication, Crowler will do everything in his power to keep his beloved blue student safe. The morning after there was a loud announcement, and Naruto shrugged as he, Jaden, and Cyrus walked to the Chancellor's office. Would Jaden Yuki, Cyrus Truesdale, and Naruto Muto report to the Chancellor's office immediately? Shepard said in a gentle but weary voice, hello boys. Please come in and close the door behind you. Cyrus cautiously closed the door behind them as they moved in. At that moment, he noticed Shepard sitting behind his desk with his chin resting in his hands and Chazz standing a few feet away from the desk, looking furious. Crowler stood behind Chazz, frowning irritably. The three Slifers chanted, hello Chancellor Shepard. So, Chancellor, why are Chazz and the three of us here this morning? Naruto asked indifferently. Shepard frowned at Chazz, who winced, and said solemnly, you see Mr. Princeton was caught by security last night in the duel arena despite it being against the school rules. Shepard continued in a doubtful tone, however, Mr. Princeton alleges he was set up to go there by the three of you and if he broke the rules it was only because he was tricked by you three. While Naruto silently rolled his eyes, Cyrus and Jaden were furious. Naruto thought, just like I thought. With a clear sneer directed at Jaden and Naruto, Crowler said, yes Chancellor. Why would an outstanding obelisk blue student be caught breaking the rules if not being set up by Slifer Red students? Naruto chose to ignore the question. Shepard sighed and said, the problem is there is no real way to verify if you three had anything to do with it. Jaden looked at him bewildered, and Naruto suggested, Jaden, show him your PDA messages. Oh, Jaden exclaimed as he gave Shepard the PDA and she examined the latest one. Shepard handed the PDA to Crowler and Chazz, who examined it and demanded, what is the meaning of this? Explain Mr. Princeton. Crowler gave Chazz a stern look before his expression calmed down. As Shepard appeared thoughtful, Crowler asserted, Dear Chancellor, this is oblivious a prank text. Plus, there is no way to show who sent the text, let alone if it was Dear Chazz. Shepard nodded when Naruto asked, may I hold onto it for a minute? Crowler reluctantly handed Naruto Jaden's PDA. Naruto typed something into Jaden's PDA and said, there, that should do it. To Chazz's surprise, his PDA began to buzz and chirp a moment later. Shepard's icy voice demanded, Mr. Princeton. Give me your PDA now. Chazz turned to face Crowler, who gave him a stern look before handing the PDA to Shepard. Shepard examined them while Naruto returned Jaden's PDA. The chibi is giving both PDAs a thumbs up while saying, look at this text. It's from your pal Naruto Muto. As Chazz whimpered, Shepard angrily remarked, there is no mistaking it. You challenged Jaden to a duel last night and when he wisely chose not to accept you tried to frame him and his friends for your mistake. Crowler begged the Chancellor to make an exception, saying, please. Chazz has excellent grades and it's his first offense. He was more concerned about the expulsion of one of his students than Chazz specifically. Following a tense moment, Naruto made the decision to stutter his two words. How about a duel? This is how things should be settled, right? Naruto proposed as Shepard appeared intrigued, Jaden appeared excited, and Chazz grunted. As Jaden sighed but gave Naruto the thumbs up, Shepard said, very well. Chazz shall face Naruto in a duel. If Chazz wins we shall forget this incident but if he loses Naruto can decide his punishment outside of expulsion. Jaden exclaimed, good luck bro, while Naruto nodded and grinned. Chazz insisted, wait. I want to duel Jaden Yuki, but Shepard's glare made him wince. This compromise was proposed by Naruto, so don't try too hard. Chazz asked Crowler for assistance, but he simply averted his gaze. Anyway, as Shepard announced that a school duel would take place during the following period, Chazz muttered, "One Slifer is not any different." As Alexis and Zane stood on the stands above Cyrus and Bastion, who were unaware of them, the crowd quickly filled up. "Be ready to lose." Chazz glared at Naruto and declared. Naruto smirked at Chazz and shot back, prepared to be punished. "Go for it." When their life points reached 4,000 apiece, they both yelled. "I lost the draw." As his hand grew to 6, Chazz yelled. Chazz's hand. Z metal tank, rear line base, bottomless trap hole, V tiger jet, W wing catapult, and Chthonian polymer. In triumph, Chazz thought, "Perfect, I have a ton set up. The loser hasn't a chance." "I call forth the attack ready V tiger jet." A green-blue jet with a yellow tiger's face and claws appeared. Roaring as it hovered in the air, Chazz declared. V tiger jet, 1600-1800, normal, machine. I then activate frontline base, a continuous spell card. After declaring that he had placed the spell card in the dual disc spell, trap slot, Chazz was suddenly raised to a position on a castle wall and sneered down at Naruto. Frontline base, spelling card in continuous. You may special summon one level 4 or lower union monster from your hand once every turn. So, in order to assist his jet, he will call forth a union monster. Given that union monsters work best in pairs, Alexis said with a hint of concern. I can now call forth W-wing catapult, my jet's best friend. As a smaller blue jet seemed to hover next to the tiger jet, Chazz yelled. 1300-1500, machine, union, effect, W-wing catapult. A monster equipped with this card gains 400 ATK, def. Additionally, if the equipped monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, destroy this card instead. You can either target one V Tiger Jet that you control and equip this card to that target, or unequip this card and special summon it. Are you afraid yet? You will be, though, when I strengthen my Tiger Jet with my W-Wing effect. As his W-Wing disassembled and fitted itself to the Tiger Jet, Chazz crackled. Jet Tiger, 2200s. With one card in his hand, Chazz placed two face-down cards, Bottomless Trap Hole and Chthonian Polymer, and said, now I will put these for later face-down and end my turn. The turn of Naruto's hand rose to 6, and he said, I draw. Paladin of White Dragon, cards of Greed AN4, Polymerization, Trap Booster, Offensive Celtic Guardian, and Trap Stun. Well. Alright, I begin with the spell card Cards of Greed, which lets us both draw 3 cards, as a massive yellow pot with an avaricious smile materialized between them, Naruto declared. Greed cards, normal spell, Cards of Greed, can only be activated once per turn and cannot be reversed. Each player draws 3 cards from their decks. Chazz drew 3 cards, hands 1 to 4, Double Summon, Y Dragon Head, and X Head Cannon. Perfect. Chazz thought with glee. The loser gave me everything I could possibly need to summon the VWXYZ Dragon Catapult, and he won't be able to stop me with my face down. Naruto drew 3 cards, hand 5 to 8, Diffusion, Red Eyes, Black Dragon, and Summon Skull. Naruto looked at a cheering Jaden and thought, well, let's test my theory out. Chazz, are you prepared? As Chazz, Naruto yelled. Go ahead, loser. You couldn't possibly summon a monster that could defeat my tank. Naruto grinned while Chazz taunted. What's Naruto up to? Alexis questioned Zane, he doesn't seem like the type to trash talk. Zane, who was studying Naruto, said, I think he is testing Chazz right now. This is it, it's fusion time. As Naruto saw Chazz's eyes enlarge with delight, he declared. To create my Black Skull Dragon, I fuse Red Eyes Black Dragon and Summon Skull by activating Polymerization from my hand. As he revealed the 2 monsters in his hand and placed the spell card in his dual disc, Naruto yelled. After using 3 cards, his hand dropped from 8 to 5. Polymerization, standard spelling card, fusion summon 1 monster from your extra deck that uses the necessary fusion materials for face-up attack or defense, and send monsters from your field or hand to the graveyard. Black Dragon with Red Eyes, 2400 2000s, Dragon, normal. Skull summoned, 2500 1200s, Fiend or normal, Black Skull Dragon, Dragon, Fusion, 3200 2500s. For a brief moment, Red Eyes and Summoned Skull appeared on Naruto's field before a swirl appeared between them, drawing them into the portal. They began to merge, and a few moments later, A massive monster with characteristics of both red eyes and summoned skull emerged, growling and yelling. Excellent performance. For his first time, a fusion monster with great power. Cyrus applauded as Bastion said, I'm impressed. Yes, I did hear that it was one of the Duelist Kingdom boss monsters for Joey Wheeler and Yugi Muto. Bastion nodded as Cyrus spoke. Yes, it's really amazing, but why is Chazz grinning down there? As he and Alexis moved to the same level as Cyrus and Bastion, Zane inquired. Dude, are you also observing? Before blushing upon witnessing Alexis's inherent beauty in person, Cyrus asked in astonishment. Yes, Cyrus. In a somewhat flat tone, Zane said, I hope you had an exciting first day. He rolled his eyes when his younger brother became enamored with Alexis. With a slightly irritated tone in his mind, Zane thought, Alexis is a person Psy. You can talk to her even if she has no interest in you romantically. The two Obelisk Blue nodded at Bastion and Cyrus as he introduced himself. Name is Bastion and this is Cyrus. When Chazz was laughing uncontrollably, Cyrus overcame his current crush on Alexis. I understand. You were caught in my trap, show off your trap card. The Chthonian Polymer Bastion, Alexis, and Zane were shocked when Chazz revealed his trap card and laughed. Chthonian Polymer, typical trap. Tribute one face-up monster to take control of the summoned monster, and only activate when your opponent fusion summons a monster. What does that card do, exactly? Cyrus and Bastion both greeted Jaden as he approached the small group, and while Zane merely raised an eyebrow at the boy with the brown hair, Alexis was preoccupied with the duel. Alexis sighed and said, very nasty card, especially for players who use fusion monsters. As the eyes of Jaden and Cyrus widened, Zane continued, you see it allows you to tribute one monster you have face up in exchange you get to take control of a fusion monster when it's summoned. Are you saying that Naruto's Black Skull Dragon is going to be supplanted? Bastion nodded solemnly as Jaden yelled. As it flew and rushed at Black Skull Dragon, a huge blown explosion of dust from the impact caused the V-Tiger Jet, which had red eyes and a huge evil grin, to yell in agony as it was infected by purple mist before turning into purple mist. AN5. Muahaha. As the cloud began to lift, Chazz let out a triumphant laugh. I now possess your powerful fusion monster. Unfortunately, as the cloud dust disappeared from his side, Chazz grinned hungrily. To everyone's surprise and dismay, Chazz's field was now empty save for his last face-down trap card. Oh my god! What took place? Bastion yelled. What kind of deceit is this? Where is my dragon, Black Skull? When Naruto grinned, Chazz let out a furious cry. When Naruto's field was eventually exposed, the cloud dust disappeared. Red Eyes Black Dragon and Summoned Skull appeared in place of an empty field, and they both snarled at Chazz. Hold on. Have his pre-fusion monsters returned? Before Jaden indicated Naruto's spell and trap zone, Alexis let out a startled shout. That's not possible. Diffusion? After activating the Diffusion spell card, Chazz stammered. Diffusion. Spelling card for quick play. Return one fusion monster to the additional deck. You can special summon every monster to the fusion monster field if all of the fusion materials are in the graveyard. AN6. Yes, I used it prior to you taking control of my Black Skull Dragon and receiving a free special summons instead of my two monsters. Well, that's cool. Naruto smiled cheekily as he asked. He now had 4 cards in his hand. Very clever. By switching the target, he evaded the trap, Alexis observed with a grin of admiration. Question. Why didn't Chazz's monster return after the trap failed? Zane turned to face him, expressionless, and Cyrus asked. Cyrus. The cost is the monster being tributed. Regardless of whether the card was negated or missed its target, it vanished, Zane explained patiently, and Cyrus nodded his head in agreement. Why you? Before raising his hand, Chazz hissed. What if you escaped my trap, then? I have one more. As his face-down card came out, Chazz exclaimed. The bottomless trap hole is now active. Additionally, my trap eliminates both of them for the price of one since diffusion calls upon them simultaneously. As a pit trap began to form beneath both of Naruto's monsters, Chazz revealed. Normal trap with a bottomless trap hole. When your opponent calls forth a monster or monsters with an attack point of 1500 or more, destroy them and remove them from play. AN7. No. That implies that Naruto will still lose his monsters. Naruto shook his head in response to Cyrus's shout. Not so quickly. I release the quick play spell card trap booster from my hand. As his spell card fell from his grasp onto the field, Naruto made his identity public. Quick play spell card, trap booster this turn. Activate one trap card from your hand and discard one card. In order to activate a trap card to chain to your trap, I discard my Paladin of White Dragon. As he dispatched his ritual monster to the cemetery, Naruto declared. Naruto now has a 4-2 hand. I turn on Trap Stun, which makes other trap cards useless for this turn. Naruto disclosed that his trap transformed the pit trap into rock before shattering the rock, enabling Naruto's monster to remain intact. Naruto has one card remaining, Normal Trap, or Trap Stun. For one turn, negate the effects of other trap cards. With his field now empty and two formidable normal monsters staring at him, Chazz's eyes widened. What? This is not possible. Naruto mock saluted Chazz as he yelled. Well, it's been amazing. Red eyes, blast of inferno fire, call forth skull, lightning attack. As his creatures rushed forward, Naruto screamed. Summoned Skull screamed as his body filled with lightning, and Red Eyes opened his mouth as a ball of black and red fire grew from its mouth, combining the two attacks to shoot blue lightning and a red ball of fire. Damage of 2,500 plus 2,400 equals 4,900 life points for Chazz. 4,000 minus 4,900 equals minus 900. Chazz screamed and collapsed to his knees. First to applaud were Jaden and Cyrus, then Bastion, Alexis, and Zane. Excellent work. What a wonderful duel. Naruto Muto wins a one-turn kill. With a clap, Shepard declared, followed by a grudging Crowler. Banner and Hibiki watched the duel in secret, grinning broadly with pride at Naruto's triumph. What a charming duel. When the winged Karibo appeared and began to chirp, Jaden cheered. Yes. He is definitely pretty good, Alexis said, glancing at Naruto with curiosity and even licking her lips for a split second. Despite the pathetic protests of Crowler, Shepard declared, now Naruto Muto is agreed you can decide Mr. Princeton punishment outside of punishment. Chazz crossed his arms and pouted, and Naruto thought, let's see. What say you? 3 months without taking a private bath in the Blue Dorm. As Chazz's mouth fell to the ground, Naruto made a suggestion. Without my daily bath, how will I clean myself? Chazz let out a furious shout. Naruto smirked and shot back, taking a shower like normal people. Chazz. Excellent. To Chazz's dismay, Shepard agreed to bar Chazz Princeton from the Obelisk Blue's private baths for 3 months. Naruto yawned as everyone soon scattered off to begin their next classes. What a suitable penalty. As Naruto turned around, Alexis's impressive feminine voice filled his ears. Personally, I think he needed to be taken down a peg or two. When Naruto finally saw Alexis for the first time, he had to suppress a groan because he didn't think the rumors about her being the hottest girl at Duel Academy did her justice. She had a very mature figure for a girl her age, which Naruto noticed immediately made her white and blue shirt bulge due to her bust size. Her skirt seemed even shorter due to her long legs that were capped with small dark blue boots that covered her feet. Her dark blonde hair framed her pretty face, with most of it trailing down her back to her lower back, and her hazel eyes, which shone with amusement as she quietly giggled into her hands, which had fingerless gloves. Naruto's inherent beauty also drew Alexis in right away, and she thought his ability to fight was a bonus. What is the name of the attractive woman? She rolled her eyes playfully as Naruto asked with a playful smile. Alexis put out her right hand and said, Alexis Rhodes, and everyone knows you, Naruto Muto. Alexis secretly relished the way his hand made her feel as he grinned and quickly took her hand in greeting, noticing how soft her fingers were and how well they contrasted with her gloves. All right, Alexis. As Alexis's smile widened and her cheeks began to flush, Naruto said, I think we shall have a very nice friendship. As they exchanged PDA numbers, Alexis concurred, I think we will, Naruto. Duel Academy was easy compared to the training he received from his beloved godfather Seto Kaiba in Duel Monsters, and Naruto soon found life more or less routine there. Naruto thought angrily, I still can't believe Seto set up the girls' dorm like this. Apparently, the system was set up so that there were no Slifer or Raw girl dorms, so all girls were automatically placed into the separate Obelisk Blue girl dorms because, unlike the male dorms, skill was not a factor in placement. It turned out that Seto had set up the academy so that any girls who had passed the test were automatically sorted into Obelisk Blue girl dorms. Naruto wondered, picturing Seto grinning, was he being lazy or did he simply think that not that many females would even want to come to Duel Academy, so he just crammed them all into Obelisk Blue regardless of actual skill to save money? Chazz and his friends had, in a sense, set the standard for what Naruto believed the majority of obelisk blue men were like, so he thought bitterly, but I suppose considering how much a snob some of the obelisk blue guys are, money is definitely a factor and not just skill either. To his dismay, he later learned that he had two fangirls who were also friends with Alexis Rhodes. My god. The Naruto Muto is here, Mindy is my name, could you please sign this for me? One day, Alexis had brought her two female friends over to meet Naruto and his friends, so Mindy introduced herself with a huge flush. Alexis gave Naruto an apologetic look as Naruto had to control his annoyance at the fangirlish tendencies of Alexis's friends. Cyrus had blushed at the two pretty girls who completely ignored Cyrus and Jaden. Jaden, to his credit, did not seem put off and seemed more focused on his deck than the new arrivals anyway. Wearing the same obelisk blue outfit, a white shirt, a blue miniskirt, and knee boots, Mindy was a pretty girl Alexis's age, but not quite as busty or mature. Her eyes were bright hazel, and her dark hair was styled in a sort of bob in the front and two spikes in the back on either side. Hi there. With a small bow, Naruto said, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mindy. Mindy and her red-headed friends squealed at his courteousness. In order to prevent his godson from becoming a good-for-nothing monkey like that joke wheeler, Naruto's godfather Seto had essentially made him take lessons in etiquette. These lessons enabled Naruto to smile and behave politely even when he didn't want to talk to them. Though Godfather could apply those lessons to Uncle Joey, Naruto reflected dryly, I promise that if it weren't for Dad, Uncle Joey would have slugged Seto in the face by now. Of course, he would be slugged right back, and Uncle Joey would be in jail with Kaiba Corps lawyers for attacking the president to Kaiba Corp. The only people Seto Kaiba seemed to respect were probably Makuba, Yugi, Atem, and himself, but he was at least polite enough to nod to T for a brief moment. Joey was an exception, as Seto couldn't help but make fun of him everywhere, which was a marked contrast to his cool, if not chilly, reception of everyone else. Naruto would be the first to publicly acknowledge that his godfather was rather condescending and rude to those he didn't respect. As he observed Mindy and her red-haired friend blushing and fanning their faces, Naruto thought, probably because she is mom and he wants to have a somewhat working relationship between us. Naruto sighed, thinking, I swear if Seto could at least give a smile rather than a smirk he could actually do public events rather than let Makuba handle them all. Although Seto was more pleasant to be around than Makuba, being around Seto did produce results, albeit in the most direct, if not impolite, manner imaginable. As he suddenly produced a pen and a rather elegant light blue handkerchief from his pocket, Naruto said, anyway, I am not sure why you want my autograph but here is something for having the courage and manners to ask. In a hurry, Naruto wrote something on the handkerchief and said it aloud. To Mindy, my new friend. I hope your future and your duels reach as high as the sky. Naruto read aloud, you new pal Naruto Muto. He gently put the handkerchief in the blue-haired girl's hand. Mindy swooned and almost fainted when Naruto planted a tiny kiss on her left hand while she used her right to cling to her new signature as if it were her new lifeline. Mindy squealed when she noticed a tiny heart next to his signature, which he added to the handkerchief, making it seem so personal in her eyes. Like the ideal gentleman, Naruto had knelt down and used his hands to gently hold her soft left wrist before planting a quick kiss on it. When Naruto turned around and got to his feet, he noticed that most of the students were staring at him with shocked and jealous looks, especially when he saw Mindy fan her hand with the left hand he had kissed. Naruto could picture his parents and their friends expressing their thoughts and opinions about what he had done. Yugi would be nervously grinning while attempting to avoid his enraged wife giving them both a glare. Naruto. You were not brought up to be a player by me. You have no right to drag that poor girl along like that. You were better raised by me. T would break. T, Naruto is just acting like a gentleman right now. When T pulled on his ear and got in his face, Yugi would try to explain, but he would wince. It is not his fault if people misinterpreted that kind gesture. What? My dear husband, it's already awful that even after all these years of marriage, I still have to watch you closely whenever we go to public gatherings or your fangirls try to make out with you. I won't allow our baby boy to experience that. Girls will not swoon over him because he will remain pure. T yelled in affirmation before letting go of Yugi's ear. How precisely am I to blame for our son's fangirls? To keep his wife from hearing, Yugi would whisper softly, it's not like I encouraged them or anything. Both Joey and Mai would be beaming with pride, with Mai even lovingly pressing his face against her chest while Joey patted Naruto's back while he fought to escape her breasts. Naruto, good job. I knew my charm would be passed on to you. You're the man. Listen to that world. Joey Wheeler's nephew shares his uncle's skill as a player. Joey wiped a fictitious tear of pride from his eye and gave him another shoulder pat. Mai would allow him to spend a few more minutes in her enormous, much-desired breasts before removing her and kissing his flushed cheeks with a moist kiss, which only made him blush more as his face turned red and her red lipstick left a mark on his cheek. My tiny Naruto. Please remember to wear protective gear. If your girlfriend or girlfriends become pregnant before your mother approves of their marriage, she may kill them. Enjoy yourself as well. With a wink and beating eyes, Mai would wink seductively, blow a kiss, and sway her hips as she and Joey walked away, her leaning tenderly into his arm. In the meantime, Makuba would wave and smile uneasily. Hee. You must have more skills than just business procedures, don't you? He has inherited your better traits, brother, Makuba observed, as Seto briefly displayed annoyance before adjusting his expression to his composed one as though it came naturally to him. Makuba, I'll disregard that. You didn't say anything, Seto said icily, but Makuba didn't appear insulted. In fact, he waved and grinned behind Seto's back. Tapping his foot and crossing his arms impatiently, Seto turned back to Naruto, looking at him with a hint of pride, impatience, annoyance, exasperation, and curiosity. Only because he knew Seto so well could Naruto see all these emotions, as most people would only assume Seto was annoyed. Naruto, playing around, what are you doing? Make sure your charm endures if you plan to use it. Gaining connections to succeed means having a large number of people you can use later. Makuba sighed behind Seto as he sternly told him, if you are going to be a gentleman, you should go for the gold and not just be polite. Then, as Godfather and Godson exchanged a glare that would have caused anyone else to flee to the hills, Naruto would glare back at Seto. Oh, Godfather, I'm not like that. Instead of controlling others to get what I want, I would much rather make true friends who will support me. I am not your stepfather, who trampled on others and harassed those who opposed him. Naruto, who was well versed in the complex past of Kaiba Corp, snapped. Makuba inhaled sharply in surprise as he glanced at Seto, whose eyes narrowed, and appeared prepared to step in just as Seto was about to slap Naruto across the face for that remark. My godson, it appears that I have taught you too much. I am so proud of your spine, and no one else but me would speak to me in that manner. After a moment that made Makuba and Naruto hold their breath, Seto remarked with pride and a smile, it seems you have grown into a man worthy of my attention after all. Do as you please. As he turned to leave, Makuba said, just know that I will always be watching out for you. I'll bring you pride. Naruto saluted, and Seto turned back for a moment before grinning and nodding. Naruto blinked away his fantasy of what might have happened if his parents and their close friends had witnessed what he had done with Mindy's hand. Whoa! How adorable is Naruto Muto! What a hottie! A red-headed obelisk blue girl jumped up and down a few times, clasped her hands together, and squealed. He couldn't help but notice how her arms gave her breasts an interesting effect, making them look rather large despite being squashed by them, and even jiggled a little because she was bouncing. Her hips and short skirt also seemed to bounce, but fortunately Naruto was able to school his face so that he wouldn't look like a pervert in front of the red-headed girl or the school as a whole. Who is Mindy, your friend? In order to avoid constantly referring to attractive girls as beautiful, I prefer to know their names. With a charming smile that he seemed to have inherited from his father, who was still regarded as one of Japan's most handsome men even after marrying his mother, Naruto asked, it's not very much a gentleman to call that to every beautiful woman. His impeccable manners were also a secret result of being apprenticed under the Seto Kaiba. After all, Seto would not permit his godson to bring shame to his name by being impolite. Though he made me learn all the manners he doesn't seem to want to use, he earned the right to be rather blunt. Not that Seto has very good manners himself. I guess having all the power money can buy does that to a guy. Naruto thought back to his early years and, despite this somewhat harsh training, he considered Seto one of his important people, along with his parents and his parents' close-knit group of friends. He also thought of Makuba as a more humorous uncle than Seto, but not quite as silly or humorous as Joey. What a smooth talker, wow. My name is Jasmine, and you can ask me out whenever you want, Jasmine said, her eyes fluttering as she leaned forward and bent over to give Naruto a good look at her body before giving him a seductive wink. While Jaden laughed, Naruto chuckled nervously as he saw Cyrus sobbing in the corner. Another attractive girl who was Alexis's age but not quite as mature or voluptuous as the Ice Queen was Jasmine. She had dark red hair in a distinctive spiky hairstyle that jutted downward, as well as hazel-colored eyes that were bright but had a much more interested look when she looked at Naruto, while her focus seemed to pass Jaden and Cyrus as unimportant or insignificant. Naruto said, That is pretty forward. Jasmine looked at him and whistled. Era. Do you dislike girls who are forward? You want me to keep my feelings to myself? Jasmine is making Naruto laugh in a cute way. Before Naruto could finish, he heard Mindy and Jasmine cough behind him. A pretty girl like you never has to hide anything from someone like me, he began. I believe Naruto needs to go somewhere. Alexis crossed her arms and gave her friends the stink eye, her face set in a frown even though she still appeared to be quite composed. She coughed in frustration. Alexis. You can't keep him all to yourself. Alexis scowled as Mindy screamed. Yes, Alexis. You're liked by all the guys here. With a playful smile, Jasmine added, you can leave the one guy we want and go after the others. Unlike her friends, Alexis was more interested in becoming a great duelist than having a boyfriend, and her eye twitched as she resented that she was more well known for her gorgeous good looks and that most of the males at Duel Academy had a crush on her. Jaden patted Cyrus' shoulder as he curled up in depression. It's unfair that attractive boys like Naruto easily win over every girl, Cyrus grumbled as he envied Naruto. As Jaden observed his friend quietly attempting to move away from the girls, he thought, I don't think Naruto really likes having all the girls' attention for some reason. I feel bad for Alexis because she has most of the guys here vying for her skirt and boasting that they got to bang Duel Academy finest woman and take her first time. Naruto thought, trying not to roll his eyes while keeping a smile on his face. They do realize I can hear them, right? When Chad and his two friends Taiyo and Reizu saw Naruto mingling with Jasmine and Mindy, they frowned. Who does that Slifer slacker believe himself to be? If his father is Yugi Muto, it matters to him, with notable jealousy, Taiyo hissed. Yes. As if he's deserving of Jasmine's love, let alone Alexis's, Reizu asserted. Alexis briefly placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder while Chazz was ruminating. To the surprise of his friend, Chazz declared, I don't care about any of that. The fact that he managed to fool my Alexis into speaking with him is what irritates me, because she is too sweet. My dear Alexis is feeling sorry for him. She doesn't communicate with him because they have something in common. In his delusional state, Chazz declared, not even realizing that he was treating Alexis more like a prize than someone who would reciprocate his romantic feelings. You're correct. If only there were a way to get that dumb Muto kid kicked out. Before Chazz silenced him, Taiyo voiced his displeasure. Stop talking. Crowler, you heard. He fears that if we deliberately attempt to expel him, Seto Kaiba will cease providing funding for the school completely, Chazz muttered as they checked to see if anyone had heard them. Seto Kaiba and Kaiba Corp were so powerful to the academy that, despite Chazz's arrogance, he acknowledged that Duel Academy belonged to Seto Kaiba and was only sustained by his funding. Nobody anticipated that Crowler would disregard his own counsel. Following Naruto's courteous but firm declaration that he was not interested in dating at this time, the group went together for the mandatory physical education class that all first-year students, regardless of dorm placement, had to take. No one could compare to Naruto Muto, who not only lapped the runners but also did not appear to be out of breath. To the delight of the girls and the annoyance of the men, he even ran backwards for a lap. In contrast, some children, such as Cyrus, were panting and appeared almost dead after running laps, while Jaden was much better shape and only slightly out of breath. Naruto is awesome. As the girls stretched on their own in the gym's corner, Jasmine let out a squeal. The girls were dressed in large white shirts, tiny black shorts, small knee socks, and white running shoes. Normally, most guys would drool at the sight of these attractive girls in rather skimpy attire, but fortunately, the girls and guys ran laps after each other, keeping the guys too busy to look at the girls while they stretched. Even though he outran the entire class, Alexis silently agreed, surveying his well-muscled body. He sure is fit. I wish we were dating. I could try to grind cheese on those abs or he could hold me in his arms. He's really attractive, Jasmine and Mindy both squealed. Alexis sulked in silence at her friends' responses, but she couldn't help but notice how attractive and athletic Naruto was. When Naruto appeared to notice Mindy and Jasmine examining him, they both turned away shyly, putting their hands behind their backs and swaying uneasily, but Naruto seemed more amused than anything else as he waved to Alexis, who waved back. Despite being one of the heads of Slifer Red, Midori Hibiki was also the gym instructor for the first-year female students. She was dressed similarly to her female students, but her shirt appeared smaller because of her larger bust and taller frame. Fortunately, she wasn't running at the moment. Hurry up. After you finish stretching, you can swoon over Mr. Muto. Hibiki reprimanded, but her tone was one of noticeable amusement rather than actual anger. The girls giggled and stared a little more subtly than before, but blushed when the teacher, who wasn't even from their own dorm, noticed them staring and returned to stretching. Pant pant pant. What are they doing? To run so quickly? Cyrus grumbled as Naruto gave him another lap while grinning casually. Oh, you are aware. Vitamins and physical activity. Or is it the genes of my parents? Jaden, who was ahead of them, laughed at Naruto's joke, but Naruto was still ahead of him because he had lapped him. The boys paused to gaze at Hibiki as she blew her whistle after a few more minutes of the light jogging. Naruto. Fun exercise. Jaden. Or pure torture. Laps. All right, that's sufficient for today. Naruto sighed as he stretched a kink in his shoulders, while the majority of the boys sighed in relief as Hibiki yelled. When Naruto saw Cyrus fall to his knees and begin to pant like a dog, he thought to himself with a sweat drop, the people in this world really are like civilians back there. Even Genin would be running laps around the most athletic people here. Heck, I am trying to hold back as much as possible to avoid getting questioned on my superhuman abilities. Kinda a pain to be honest. Please, never again. To avoid running, I became a duelist. Jaden gave Cyrus a sympathetic pat on the back as he complained, and Naruto was about to roll his eyes and show sympathy. You mean Cyrus? As she approached the three in her white t-shirt and gym shorts, Alexis asked, casting a worried glance down at Cyrus. When Cyrus realized who was asking, he looked up, blushed, and immediately stood up, trying to pretend that he wasn't going to die from some routine laps. His panting stopped. Yes, Alexis, exactly. My name is Cyrus. How are you doing? Cyrus let out a squeak and then coughed to get his voice back to normal. Naruto laughed as Jaden joked, wow, you seem to gotten better instantly with a little talk with Alexis. Cyrus glared at them both before turning back to Alexis, who merely raised an eyebrow. Why would Cyrus feel better just by talking to me? Alexis seemed to have no idea about Cyrus and the majority of the boys' feelings for her. Mindy and Jasmine sighed from the bleachers, with Jasmine even slapping her forehead with the palm of her hand. They exchanged frustrated glances and waved their arms at the attractive blonde, as though they were still in shock that she was unable to see it. Alexis, I adore you, but you really need to improve your room reading skills. Mindy looked sympathetic, but Jasmine said, I mean, you are basically like a model here and you still don't realize when people fall in love with you at first glance. Perhaps that's what makes her so attractive. Guys are drawn to the whole innocent thing even more than your loud and bold mouth. Jasmine's eye twitched as she glared at Mindy, who merely grinned naively as she made the suggestion. A loud mouth, huh? Take note. Before you have a chance, Naruto Muto will give my mouth and every other part of me a date. As Mindy scowled, Jasmine yelled. A new rivalry was formed as they glared at each other as sparks appeared to connect their eyes. Cyrus looked down shyly, blushed, and waved his hands. Alexis blinked, looking perplexed at his admission, while Cyrus appeared to blush simply from speaking to her. You are just really nice and pretty, so talking to you is like a good luck charm, hee, Cyrus said nervously. Thank you, I guess. We hardly know each other at all, so I guess that's a compliment, even though it's rather arbitrary. Alexis responded dryly before a tiny smile spread across her face. You can ask me or one of the teachers if you're sick or need anything. We are all in this together after all, Alexis said sweetly and kindly as a few boys' hearts grew. Meanwhile, a nearby Hibiki Midori simply laughed merrily at Alexis's gentle, if somewhat naive, demeanor. The pleasures, or I guess the pain, of being a pretty girl in a school full of hormonal teenagers, Miss Hibiki remarked in her mind with a smirk. I don't think there is anything this girl can do that won't make the boys swoon over her. She could be completely cold to them and they would still offer to polish her boots or carry her luggage around. Then Naruto swooped in, and Alexis's eyes brightened, indicating that she was more interested in Naruto than in her unofficial fan club. Despite their brief acquaintance, Naruto and Alexis shared a smile, demonstrating their ease with one another. Alexis, don't worry. You don't need to put in as much effort, Naruto said brightly. We know that not all Obelisk Blue students are like Chazz and his cronies. Alexis sighed in relief, but then scowled when Chazz and a few of his friends crowded them, and Jaden appeared prepared to intervene. Alexis thought bitterly as she fought the urge to glare at Chazz. Wow, Chazz is really annoying. Why does he think following me around will get me to pay him attention? If anything, he just gets under my skin and his personality gives the impression all of Obelisk Blue are snobs. While Bastion was observing this with curiosity, Cyrus had made the sensible decision to retreat. Alexis. Hello. As always, you look amazing, Chazz shouted, waving excitedly at Alexis. Hey Chazz, you still look the same. With far less zeal than the eager boy, Alexis flatly replied, I don't think I have changed that much in the last day or so. You're playing hard to get. One day, you will realize how amazing Chazz is and how perfect we will be as a couple. Alexis hardly paid attention as Chazz yelled. If you have time to make corny lines like that, then you have time to improve your deck and keep your grades up. Alexis reminded him bluntly, dismissively waving him away and turning to face Naruto instead. Chazz turned to face Naruto and his friends, looking annoyed, but he didn't appear to hang the attractive young woman. Is Alexis being bothered by you? Chazz scowled as he said, she has better things to do than hang around with you losers. However, Alexis scowled behind his back. Alexis is free to express her opinions if she has an issue with us. Chazz, she is a person, not a thing. You may want to keep in mind the distinction. She is not something to be possessed or won. Naruto calmly but sharply reminded him, she is her own person. Even though his mother and Auntie Mai were happily married with their spouses, he did not like that they were constantly being stared at and drooled over like a piece of meat. However, he did notice that Alexis was looking down, blushing slightly, and shifting slightly on her feet as if embarrassed and pleased by his remark. Chazz appeared to realize that Alexis was still present and that they were in public, so instead of slugging Naruto in the face, he gritted his teeth, growled, and pointed to himself as if he were the man of the school. Hi, slacker Slifer. I don't care who your godparent is or how your dad is. Do you have it? You should be kicked out of here first because, in my opinion, you are a has-been. Chazz exclaimed as his companions chuckled. Chazz, that's telling him. If he is Yugi Muto's son, so what? Loudly, one of his friends said. Naruto merely grinned, but Alexis's eyes narrowed in disappointment. Oh no Chazz, are you still upset that this Slifer slacker defeated you in a formal duel? When Jaden and even Alexis laughed at his humiliation, Naruto scoffed and Chazz snarled. Stop talking. It was a rigged duel. Not one of my good cards was coming in. You must have received perfect cards while my good cards were at the bottom due to a malfunction in our duel discs. While the majority of the other students stared at Chazz's delusion in bewilderment, Chazz asserted that his friends nodded. Bastion approached Jaden, his face expressionless. How nonsensical. According to what we saw during the duel, Naruto at least needed some good fortune, while Chazz had brand new, flawless hands. Kaiba Corp. Has installed the most cutting-edge security features on these dual discs, while Naruto is utilizing a conventional one. Bastion muttered, it doesn't appear that even though he is the godson of Seto Kaiba and the son of Yugi Muto, he has a different dual disc than the ones given to us. Jaden rubbed his head and smiled uneasily, his eyes closed. It appears that Chazz is simply resentful and will never be able to cope with a loss. If he fails to activate a trap effect after the timing is missed, I'm willing to wager that he is the type of card that would blame the dual disc. Bastion sneered but grinned amusedly as Jaden joked, like forgetting to activate Mirror Force when his life points were about to be wiped out. To everyone's surprise, Naruto nodded as if preoccupied before taking out his cell phone. Naruto pointed his camera at a furious Chazz and said, okay, hold that pose right there. Slacker, what are you doing? Chazz crossed his arms and demanded. I am sending the video to Godfather because you have a grievance regarding the dual discs. He would undoubtedly enjoy hearing about the hacking and cheating of his standard-issue dual disc, which has built-in security features that make even the most sophisticated computer systems appear to be Game Boy Color systems. Since customer service has always been Kaiba Corp's top priority, he is always happy to hear customer complaints in person, especially when I forward the messages to his private cell phone. With a smile, Naruto typed something on his phone in response. Everyone stared at Naruto with wide eyes as Chazz and his goons sputtered and their jaws dropped. He's not capable of doing that. After all, this is the Seto Kaiba, and since he employs about a dozen people to handle customer service calls, why would he even answer the phone? Astonished, Cyrus asked. Alexis crossed her arms and appeared thoughtful, seemingly ignoring the boys who were observing her small movements with delight. However, she retreated when her friends Jasmine and Mindy gave them a stern look. I believe he could find the time to answer the phone for his godson and potential heir. With a chuckle and an impressed expression, Alexis pondered, I mean, it's not every day that one of the wealthiest men in the world picks someone to raise and give him significant power in his company. AN2. Unbeknownst to him, Zane passed him and joined Alexis, while Cyrus appeared to be about to faint from her response. If you don't stop talking to Cyrus, he will always have a crush on you. However, I suppose he won't be able to overcome his shyness either if girls completely ignore him. Zane reprimanded Cyrus, who didn't seem to hear him because he was still in shock that Alexis had even responded to his query. what an annoying little brother. Alexis smiled and waved him away after giving him a playful shoulder punch that caused the elder Truesdale to smile a little. Oh, Zane, hurry up. You must become more relaxed with your brother. If nothing else, he is kind. Zane sneered and crossed his arms as Alexis said, you being this strict older brother won't help him. He will gain confidence at his own pace. Zane arched an eyebrow as Alexis said, I am sure if you were more nurturing then I feel Cyrus would gain confidence in his own skills more effectively than this tough guy persona. Zane glanced down at Cyrus, who nervously waved at him while pushing up his glasses, which appeared to be falling down his nose. Hi, Zane. How are things going? Cyrus asked anxiously, barely able to meet his older brother's cooler gaze. Cyrus. I'm hoping you've been studying consistently. Before you graduate, you had better get past Slifer Red. As Cyrus leapt to his feet and saluted, Zane told him sharply, it should only be your starting goal, not your end goal. Yes, my brother, Cyrus gave him a half-hearted assurance, I will try, just before he appeared to hear something. Jaden. What is that? What did you want? I apologize, brother. Perhaps next time. Cyrus asserted as he hurried over to Jaden and Bastion, who both smiled at him and acknowledged him. Cyrus covered his face and appeared worn out, and Zane sighed at how afraid he was of him. Alexis looked at Zane worriedly, and Zane said, that kid, with a note of pride mixed with sadness in his voice. You see? Zane scowled and turned to face Alexis, who pointed out, he wouldn't be so afraid of you if you treated him more kindly. Like your sibling. Zane yelled, but he flinched when he saw Alexis's dejected expression. That wasn't necessary. I apologize. Alexis looked up and nodded as Zane apologized, saying, we will find him one day. Yes, we will. Alexis declared resolutely, he is missing, not gone. Then, as she glanced down at Naruto, who had put Seto Kaiba on speaker after calling him, Alexis grinned. As Alexis kept looking down at Naruto, she thought, perhaps he could assist me, he might have the contacts to visit the abandoned dorm. With a slight smirk, Zane appeared to notice Alexis's intense gaze. Zane remarked, I guess Duel Academy #1 most beautiful girl has finally found someone she is interested in. Zane was well aware of Alexis's standing in Duel Academy, and even though he knew it was a legitimate title, he had no interest in a romantic relationship with his best friend. Slacker. What are you doing? Chazz screamed as he tried to grab Naruto's phone, but Naruto leapt over him, flipped in the air, and landed on his feet with an unexpected degree of agility. While Bastion had a small smile of amusement, Alexis giggled into her hand, and even Zane scoffed at Chazz. Mindy and Jasmine were staring at Naruto's coolness, making him even higher on their list of #1 boyfriends. Meanwhile, Chazz stumbled on his feet from the missed swipe and fell on his face, causing Jaden and Cyrus to laugh openly at the obelisk blue. Hey, is there something about the way, Naruto? Seto's voice could be heard on Naruto's cell phone. Is Seto Kaiba actually there? What a fool, he is among the world's most well-known duelists. His voice was impossible for others to mimic. His voice is so seductive and serene. Naruto was listening to a variety of voices, and to his amusement, Mindy and Jasmine made the final remark. Even though they are not the only ones, Seto is still one of the best bachelors in the world, and his good looks didn't seem to deteriorate with age. In fact, he seemed to stay in his prime forever, despite how impolite and direct he is in person. Naruto thought amusingly, I remember when Uncle Joey called Seto a statue that never changes. Seto glared at him and instructed him that monkeys shouldn't speak to their superiors. Then he somehow managed to trip him and throw him to the ground. Even though Seto seemed to be speaking in his usual callous manner, Naruto was the only one who could hear the faint hints of worry seeping through for his godson, which made Naruto smile a little more broadly. Father God. Nothing is wrong with me. Do you think this is a bad time? When Naruto heard multiple voices in the background, he inquired. Before there was total silence, there was a brief period of conversation, which Naruto took to be Seto raising his hand to indicate his desire for quiet and to assert his authority. No, at this time, there is nothing that needs to be discussed. Seto said bluntly, if anything, I can just reschedule for tomorrow. Naruto grinned because he could almost see some of the board members complaining to themselves. No matter how important they believe they are nothing in comparison to Seto's importance to the company and the world. Not that any of them have the courage to speak out against the president of Kaiba Corp. Naruto thought smugly. Well, Godfather. Naruto turned to face Chazz, whose confidence seemed to evaporate like steam rising from his head, and said matter-of-factly, Chazz Princeton has a complaint about the Duel Academy dual disk security system, or rather the operating system. Oh, Chazz Princeton. That name sounds familiar. Give me a minute, Seto said in a firm tone that was tinged with curiosity and impatience. Chazz rushed forward, landing directly beside a composed and amused Naruto, who arched an eyebrow. Slacker, hang up the phone. Chazz yelled angrily, stop taking things I said out of context. He was careful to be quiet enough so that Seto on the other end of Naruto's phone would not hear him. To the amusement of Jaden and the majority of the students, Naruto simply pretended not to hear him as he looked up and covered his ear, seemingly saying, sorry, can you speak up? In actuality, aside from Chazz's own supporters, no one seemed inclined to interrupt or defend Chazz in any way. Even Chazz Obelisk Blue supporters appeared too afraid of Seto Kaiba to openly voice their support for Chazz while Kaiba was on the phone. While Lyman Banner was smirking in the corner despite his efforts to appear neutral, Miss Midori Hibiki even burst out laughing into her hand. Serves that obelisk elite right. Midori and Banner were unaware of each other at the same time. I know I am supposed to be neutral, if not nurturing, to every student at Duel Academy, but privately there are snobs here who need to be taken down a few notches. In secret, both Slifer Red's leaders were extremely happy that someone like Naruto Muto, whose talent alone should have made him yellow if not for Obelisk Blue dormitories, still chose Slifer Red to earn his future promotions. It appeared that both leaders were fed up with the lack of respect their dormitory students received in comparison to Obelisk Blue students. Seto's voice resumed speaking on the speakerphone about 30 seconds later. Oh, Chazz Princeton. The Princeton family's youngest son. Earned his place in Obelisk Blue and is a first-year student like Naruto, Seto said, sounding as though he were reading dry summary notes and lacking any sign of admiration. Is that the pupil who has claimed to have my Duel Academy dual discs? Seto said icily, but everyone could hear how angry he sounded. I would love to hear what he has to say about the state-of-the-art and highest quality dual discs in the entire world. While the board members were attempting to avoid any kind of stare from Seto during one of his bad moods, Naruto could hear Seto clenching his fist and gritting his teeth on the other end of the phone. Say what you want about his personality. His pride in his company is second to none. If there is one thing he loves aside from Uncle Makuba, it's his company and the imagine of what his company does for the world, Naruto thought, implying that Makuba was essentially just another uncle. As Naruto gazed at the white-faced Chazz, who appeared prepared to plead, he maintained an innocent smile. Well, he seemed to think that my draws were too fortunate and that my dual disc in particular was cheating, in some way because we recently engaged in a duel. Additionally, he appeared to believe that his dual disc was giving him bad draws, due to some sort of malfunction. Naruto emphasized cheating and bad draws as if he were using air quotes over the phone. Very strange remarks, especially since my dual disc is a regular Duel Academy disc, contrary to popular belief. I don't have a specially designed one or anything, so saying I was receiving lucky draws also suggests that the dual discs can be altered or hacked in some way to help some people while hindering others. Naruto added merrily as Chazz collapsed on his butt, his mouth hanging open. Everyone except Naruto shuddered at Seto's icy remark. Oh, is that so? That is quite the claim. I feel like bowing my head even though it's just his voice and he's not even on the island, fearfully, Shreyas thought. To his annoyance, Cyrus glanced over his shoulder and saw Jaden beaming broadly. Jaden whispered excitedly, Seto Kaiba is so cool, isn't he, Cyrus? I mean, he can just command people from an entire different place. Cyrus's eyes widened. Cyrus frantically looked around to make sure no one was listening and whispered back, why are you so excited? He sounds annoyed, back. Jaden's eyes seemed to be shining like stars as he whispered, I wonder how I would fare in a duel with him. People say he is the second greatest duelist in the world besides Mr. Yugi himself. Isn't that awesome though? Then Jaden rubbed his head while staring at the amused Naruto. I guess I can ask Naruto later. Mr. Kaiba is his godfather and his dad is Yugi, although it might be weird for him to talk about that way. He probably sees them as family and not some legends like we do. Shyly acknowledging that the conversation would be awkward, Jaden said. Cyrus simply lowered his head and let out a sigh of relief. Zane looked down with a serious but admiring smile, while Alexis was solely focused on Naruto. As Alexis nodded but paid little attention, Zane said, so that is Seto Kaiba. I can see how he maintains Kaiba Corp as its president. Color me impressed. He is someone to look up to. Alexis couldn't contain her anxiety and said aloud, but he doesn't seem very friendly. I wonder how Naruto could stand living with him. This caused Zane to smirk. You sound rather concerned, Alexis. You might want to watch that, or rumors about your interest in the heir to Muto and Kaiba may start to circulate. As Alexis's eye twitched, Zane teased her, saying, I'm sure you understand how rumors can start with all of them about you after all. Perhaps you should get a girlfriend of your own so you won't have to deal with fangirls. Also, those rumors about us can be put to rest. I sigh. They're completely irrational. Both Alexis and Zane shuddered together as Alexis shot back, we are friends, but for some reason people like to assume we are a couple. Mr. Princeton. Would you like to talk to me about anything? Please be truthful. Normally, I don't bother to personally address rumors about my company's reputation or technology, but this seems to be an exception. Sito's voice rang out coldly, but with such force that everyone in the vicinity began to perspire before Naruto, who simply smiled while holding the phone in his hand. If my godson himself feels this is worth bringing it to my attention, then you will have full attention. That is your cue to talk, Chazz. Believe me, it will be worse if you don't say anything. I would know after all. Naruto mouthed to the wide-eyed Chazz before closing his jaw. Mister, in an attempt to win Seto over with flattery, Chazz stammered, Kaiba sir, it's an honor to speak to you even if through a phone. My parents and brothers tell me such great story of the Kaiba Corp president. Naruto fought the impulse to roll his eyes because he could picture Seto on the other end of the line, his elbows resting on the board meeting table and his chin resting on his clasped hands, his eyes twitching. As Naruto was told about his godfather's relatively humble upbringing and how he earned everything he and Makuba had now, he reflected, yeah, if there is one person in the world that flattery will not work on, his godfather. He had to earn everything he has now and turn a weapon company into a gaming company from the ground up. He does not care what people say about him but rather how the world sees his accomplishments. Let me be direct about this. I don't have the patience or time for flattering small talk. Seto explained calmly before a hint of impatience crept into his voice. If you only have sweet words that don't mean anything, I have nothing to say to someone like that. Sito's tone was anything but inquisitive as he asked, now let's cut to the chase, shall we, Mr. Princeton? Before realizing that Seto would not appear to see his nod, Chazz nodded. Chazz stammered, yes sir. Thank you sir. Demonstrating that thousands, if not millions, of other people would refrain from criticizing Seto Kaiba. Excellent. Now is there any truth to what my godson is saying about you making accusations that my dual disk technology has a flaw? Something along the lines of your dual disk having unfair draws and Naruto having draws favored to you. That is quite the claim, as it would indicate that the software and hardware I personally vetted can be modified in some way to give unfair odds to certain people at will. Sito's initial tone was slightly sarcastic, but as he spoke, it became increasingly irate. Chazz stumbled, seemingly at a loss for words, and looked frantically at everyone in the room, who seemed to be avoiding his eyes despite his wide eyes and cries. Oh well, Well, Mr. Princeton. Speak up, like I said, I am not one to beat around the bush. Is there any truth to what my godson was saying? Seto repeated, his voice growing increasingly irritated. Chazz appeared to be like a mouse, unable or unwilling to carry on a conversation with Seto over the speakerphone. Chazz appeared to regain his confidence now that someone else was speaking, but his face fell when he heard what he had to say. Suddenly, one of Chazz's friends decided to speak up. His lackey smirked and ignored Chazz's death-threatening glare as he said, Mr. Kaiba sir, I was here. Chazz did make accusations about how in a duel he and Naruto had recently he was getting subpar draws and mysteriously Naruto seemed to draw the perfect cards to beat him. I'll murder him, in front of the Seto Kaiba, how dare he make me look foolish? Chazz pondered angrily. Chazz's other obelisk blue crony added smugly, yeah, I can confirm. I was here too sir. Chazz made those claims in front of everyone here. He appeared to be much less scared and obedient to Chazz now that he could humiliate Chazz in front of one of Japan's most powerful men. All right, those two are falling. They have surpassed the Slifer slackers that I will eliminate while attending this school. Chazz said in his head as he pictured them later being crushed beneath his feet in retaliation. Seemingly on the other side, Seto yelled, I see, Roland. Come here now, to entice his devoted assistant to join him. Roland said in a cool tone, yes sir, what can I do for you? With reverence and respect for Seto Kaiba. Ah, Roland. Good man. Having met Seto numerous times during his training and grooming for Naruto's potential succession to Kaiba Corp, Naruto thought cheerfully and fondly, I know if he only asked Seto would set him up for life on a private island if he wanted for all his long years of service. AN3. Ironically, Roland's devotion to Seto is so strong that he would need to take a vacation or even retire before he could take a break. Naruto thought, This is not going to go well, is it? Get ready to activate Protocol 66. I'll let you know when to do so. Make all the arrangements right away. Seto ordered, and Naruto's mouth fell open and his eyes grew wide. Is he real? Even for him of all people, that protocol is excessive, Naruto pondered anxiously. Sir, are you sure? Mr. Muto will also be, Roland said softly, raising a hint of worry that the phone could still pick up. After some hesitation, Seto concluded, make the preparation. Even if he doesn't like it, he will get over it eventually. Roland was heard saying, yes sir, preparing Protocol 66 now, as he turned to leave. To everyone's confusion, Naruto yelled, damn it. This was not supposed to happen, in frustration. When Jaden noticed his friend's level of anxiety, he asked, bro. What's wrong? What is Protocol 66? Naruto responded in a robotic tone of defeat, deactivation of all Duel Academy duel discs and shutting down Duel Academy till further notice. Eh? The look of shock on the faces of everyone else in the room was the same. How can he do that? This is a joke, right? I already made my plans to graduate here. I assure you young students. This is no joke. I will not let the reputation of my company be tarnished due to rumors of tampering with the dual disc system. I would rather shut down the entire island down and spend the time making sure my program is truly the best of the best, rather than allow possibly faulty equipment to be continued to be used. Seto was being truthful. Banner and Miss Hibiki nodded to one another as they hurried over to Naruto and the phone. Mr. Kaiba, sir. I am Professor Banner and this is Professor Hibiki. We are teachers here and we have to state our opinion that shutting down the entire academy is an extreme measure and not warranted, sir. Banner said with a worried but polite tone. Yes, sir. I believe our reputation can speak for itself on how the investment you put into the island has been paid back many times over with the results. Hibiki responded with optimism. Noted, although not very relevant. It is my decision on what I consider a good investment or not. Matter of fact, I was considering reevaluating the standards for Obelisk Blue anyways. I have heard some less than savory rumors about certain individuals. It just so happens that shutting down the island itself will also factor in how I decide to start the system up again. Seto's uncaring tone rang out as he seemed to be calm but firm in his answer. Duel Academy is over? Is this really the end? Naruto bit his lip as he observed the teachers' and students' despair. He let out a sigh, inhaled deeply, and briefly closed his eyes before a determined expression emerged. Raising a hand to stop others from speaking, Naruto firmly said, Godfather, this is all a misunderstanding. Let me clear things up for you. After all, I am your eyes and ears. Naruto made a silent remark, even if you won't tell me directly, that is my role. Everyone was holding their breath and wide-eyed as they watched Naruto with hope when Seto said, Roland. Wait. I will listen to what Naruto has to say first before I give my decision. Naruto gave Chazz a death glare when he appeared prepared to object, saying, Sigh. Chazz did make a claim that there were unfair advantages between our dual discs. However, that if anything was just him complaining without any proof. He is kinda self-centered and believes the world should bow to him and that luck should favor him, and if it doesn't, life is against him. His beloved Alexis, who was giving him a similar glare and forcing him to keep his mouth shut, did not help either. Is that so? So Mr. Princeton was just whining like a brat and not making an accusation directly against my company? Seto paused. Naruto's eyes seemed to dart quickly between different emotions as he looked down. In a whisper that no one else could hear, Naruto cursed, I swear on the Egyptian gods themselves and on Pharaoh Atemname that this is not something that needs to be researched further. Please, Godfather. After what appeared to be a minute of deliberation, Seto said, I know you of all people understand what that oath means. As everyone regarded Naruto with varying degrees of sympathy, Seto said, very well, I will let this comment slide. It must be a joke of some sort. Wheeler must have rubbed off on you despite my efforts. Sigh, we will need to have a talk when the year is over. As everyone in the room exhaled in relief, Seto said, Roland, we will let this incident go. Protocol 66 will not be needed today. But Naruto could hear the teasing and a faint tone of mockery that only he could hear. I feel like Seto was testing me or putting on a show. Perhaps he simply wanted me to bow my head once more to express my gratitude to him. Naruto thought dejectedly as he hung up the phone and bowed his head, sighing. I can never really know with that man. Just remember, next time he will actually shut down this school down. He would rather lose one form on investment than have his reputation smeared. Trust me on this. Keep that in mind next time you complain about your luck. Chazz let out a sigh and nodded. Chazz flipped Naruto off in an attempt to repair his reputation, but this was ruined when he fled while his goons tried him as if nothing had happened. Yo guys, it's RyugaXD. You already know YouTube has its limit size, so if you want to see the spicier, uncensored, and exclusive stuff I can't post here, check out my Patreon. That's where I drop all my 18+ lemon content, early uploads, and more. Links in the description. Come join the fun.